Hi guys. Tonight we step back into a world so old that no city has yet risen, no king has yet claimed a throne, and no written word has been pressed into clay or carved into stone. You're standing beneath a sky crowded with stars near a low crackling fire while cold air moves softly through dark trees and the smell of smoke clings to animal hides. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, let me know where you're watching from and what your local time is. It is always a little comforting to imagine all these quiet rooms around the world, glowing softly in the night. Now dim the lights and let your eyes adjust to the darkness before history begins to speak. You're not entering a kingdom. You're not walking through a market street or passing a temple or hearing the wheels of a cart on stone. Those things belong to a much later human story. Here before civilization, life moves in smaller circles. A few families, a shifting camp, a path remembered by feet rather than maps. The world is colder than the one you know, wider, quieter, and yet somehow more alive. The ground beneath you is uneven and damp. Grass brushes your ankles. Somewhere beyond the firelight, an animal calls once then falls silent. You feel the cool night settle on your face, and you draw your hide cloak closer because central heating, you may be shocked to hear, has not yet made its grand appearance. Humanity is still learning the oldest lessons: where to find water, which berries are safe, how to follow herds, how to keep embers alive until morning. This is the long age before farming, before villages became permanent, before granaries, taxes, walls, and all the other charming inventions that would one day make life both easier and much more complicated. For most of human existence, people lived as hunter-gatherers, moving with seasons and resources rather than staying in one fixed place. That is one of the great mainstream facts of our species. Farming is recent compared with a deep span of human life. Modern Homo sapiens have existed for roughly hundreds of thousands of years, while agriculture began only around 12,000 years ago in several parts of the world. So as you walk slowly toward the fire, you are entering not a strange exception, but the human normal. This is how people live for far longer than they have lived in cities. The camp is small. A ring of stones holds glowing coals. Thin smoke rises and fades into the stars. Nearby wooden poles lean together beneath a covering of hides and branches. The shelter is not grand, but it works. It breaks the wind. It traps a little warmth. It smells of leather ash, dry grass, and the faint sourness of bodies that have walked all day. Very glamorous, of course, in the way real survival often is not. You hear soft voices, not loud conversation, not the crowded noise of streets, but low murmurs beside the fire. Someone is scraping a hide with a stone tool, the rhythm slow and steady. Someone else turns a piece of meat near the flames. A child wrapped in fur fights sleep with the ancient determination of children everywhere, proving that bedtime has probably always required negotiation. Before you imagine this world as simple, you pause. Simple is the wrong word. There are no written laws here, no metal tools, no wheels, no farms, and yet everything around you depends on knowledge. The people beside you know the land as carefully as you might know the rooms of your own home. They know which hollow holds water after rain. They know where birds nest in spring. They know the smell of weather changing. They know the difference between a useful stone and an ordinary one. Their technology is quiet but precise. Stone blades, bone points, wooden spears hardened in fire, cord made from plant fibers, baskets perhaps woven with patient fingers. None of it looks like much from a distance, but each object carries generations of trial, error, and memory. If you dropped a modern person here with a full phone battery and no signal, the phone would become a very smooth rock within a day. These people, meanwhile, would keep moving. Researchers continue to question exactly how much daily life varied between early human groups, because climate, landscape, and available animals shaped everything. A group living near a cold steppe would not live exactly like one near a warm coast or wooded valley. Some scholars suggest that mobility was constant and restless. while others point out that many groups likely return to favoured places again and again following seasonal rhythms that were familiar rather than random. You sit near the edge of the firelight and listen. The flames make small clicking sounds as damp wood dries. Sparks rise and vanish. The warmth touches your knees while your back remains cold. This contrast, half warmth and half night, is one of the basic feelings of the ancient world. Fire gathers people into a circle. Outside the circle, darkness belongs to other creatures. Inside it, hands work, food cooks, stories begin. No one here thinks of themselves as prehistoric. That word belongs to us looking backward. To them, this is simply life. Morning means checking tracks near the muddy stream. Afternoon means searching for tubers or watching the horizon for movement. Evening means repairing tools, sharing food, listening, resting. Time is not measured by clocks, but by light, hunger, cold, and memory. You notice how much attention everyone gives to the environment. A shift of wind makes one person glance up. A faint rustle makes another turn their head. The world is read constantly, like a book made of scent, sound, and movement. The smell of crushed plants underfoot. The distant musk of animals. The brightness of the moon. The texture of clouds. Survival is not a single heroic act. It is attention repeated every day. There is a lesser-known detail here, a quiet one. Archaeologists have found evidence that some hunter-gatherer groups used red ochre, a natural pigment long before settled civilization. It may have been used for body painting, hide, preparation, symbolic marking, or perhaps all of these. Imagine a small piece of deep red earth resting near the fire, its colour bright even in the dim light. Someone has kept it, carried it, valued it. Not because it fills the stomach, but because human beings have never lived by food alone. You look around the camp again, and the scene feels less empty than it did at first. There is beauty here, but it is not arranged for display. It is in the glow on a sleeping child's cheek. It is in the pattern of sinew thread. It is in the careful placement of tools beside the shelter entrance. It is in the way people sit close enough to share heat without needing to speak. And you might wonder, what did they dream about? Maybe they dreamed of animals, of rivers, of lost relatives, of places beyond the next ridge. Maybe they dreamed in images no archaeologist can recover, because the softest parts of human life rarely fossilize. A laugh disappears. A lullaby disappears. A hand resting on another hand disappears, and yet somehow you can almost feel them here. The night deepens, the fire lowers, someone adds a branch and the flames brighten for a moment, throwing long shadows across the ground. Those shadows move over faces that are ancient and familiar at the same time. Their world is not yours, but their tiredness is. Their need for warmth is. Their hope that tomorrow will bring food safety and a little kindness is. You remain beside the fire, breathing slowly. Behind you lies the modern world with its glowing screens and busy calendars. Ahead lies the long path before civilization, a path made by countless feet, crossing plains, forests, rivers and shores. For now there is only this first night, this small circle of light, and the feeling that human history began not with monuments, but with people keeping each other warm in the dark. The fire has settled into a steady glow, and you remain close to it because in this age warmth is not a background comfort. It is a living thing. It must be guarded, fed, carried, and respected. Before there are lamps, ovens, chimneys, stoves, or the heroic little button that makes modern heating obey you, there is firelight breathing softly in the dark. You sit with your knees drawn near your chest while the night presses gently around the camp. The stars overhead seem sharper than they do in the modern world, not because they are closer, of course, but because no city haze dims them, no streetlights, no windows glowing in apartment towers. Only the black sky, the pale river of stars, and the orange pulse of flames reflecting in watchful eyes. The historical background is simple but enormous. Long before farming-controlled fire became one of humanity's great turning points, Evidence suggests that ancient humans used fire hundreds of thousands of years ago, though researchers continue to debate exactly when regular controlled fire use became common. Some sites hint at very early fire use, while others are clearer and later. As usual, the past refuses to hand us a neat little receipt. Still, by the time you're imagining this small camp of early Homo sapiens, fire is already woven into life. It cooks food, it gives warmth, it hardens wooden points, it keeps some animals at a cautious distance, it turns night from a wall into a room. You watch one of the elders lean forward with a stick gently pushing embers together. The movement is careful, almost tender. Fire is not treated like a casual tool. It is more like a guest who can save your life, ruin your shelter, or vanish if neglected. A little dry grass is tucked near the coals. A breath follows. The red glow brightens and a small flame rises thin and blue at its base before becoming gold. You hear it before you fully see it. A soft crackle, a faint sigh, the snap of sap inside a branch. The smell changes too from dull ash to fresh smoke, sharp and woody. It catches in your nose and settles into your clothing. Later when you sleep, your hair and hide covering will smell of it. In this world, smoke is not unpleasant in the way it might be in a modern house. It is the scent of safety supper and another night survived. Someone near you is cooking a small piece of meat on a pointed stick. Fat drips and hisses in the coals. Nearby a flat stone warms beside the edge of the fire. A few roots lie there, softening slowly. They are not seasoned with salt pepper or a tiny artisanal herb blend from a glass jar. They are simply food, and that is miracle enough. Cooking is one of the great changes fire brought to human life. It made many foods easier to chew and digest, and some scientists argue that cooked food helps support the energy needs of larger human brains. Scholars remain divided on the details of this idea, especially the timing and scale of fire's role in human evolution, but nearly everyone agrees that cooking changed the relationship between people, food, and the body. You accept a small roasted root from someone beside you. It is hot against your fingers, so you shift it from hand to hand quietly, proving that ancient people also had to deal with food that was technically edible, but personally attacking them. When it cools, you bite into it. The outside is smoky and a little charred. The inside is soft, earthy, faintly sweet. It warms your mouth, then your chest. Around the fire, the day's work continues. A woman scrapes fibres from a plant stem, twisting them into cord. A man checks the edge of a stone blade, running his thumb near it but not across it. A child pokes at ash with a twig until an adult gently takes the twig away because apparently some parenting rules are older than civilization. The light changes every face. It deepens cheekbones, brightens eyes, and makes shadows move as if they are listening. This is where language, memory, and imagination gather. Fire extends the day beyond sunset. It gives people time to repair tools, teach children, share warnings, and tell stories. No one writes anything down, but that does not mean knowledge is fragile. It lives in repetition, in gesture, in song, in the familiar opening of a tale told many times. A quirky and lesser-known tidbit rests in this firelit world. Some prehistoric hearths were not just simple campfires. Archaeologists have found carefully arranged hearth features, burned stones, ash layers, and signs that people reused fireplaces over time. In some Ice Age sites, heated stones may have helped cook food or warm sleeping areas. Imagine carrying a warmed stone close to your body on a cold night. Not glamorous, perhaps, but honestly, neither are most good blankets if you think about them too hard. You look beyond the flames. The darkness is thick. The fire does not erase it. It only makes a circle inside it. Somewhere out there, branches shift. A small animal moves through dry leaves. Farther away, something larger exhales or calls, and the camp stills for just a moment. No one panics, no one leaps up, they listen. The fire pops. The sound seems louder now. Then the quiet returns and slowly the camp relaxes. This is another gift of fire. It does not remove danger, but it helps people face danger together. Within the glow you can see the people beside you. You can read expressions. You can share warmth. You can decide silently and together whether the sound beyond the trees matters. Fear becomes less lonely when faces are visible. You notice how the flames create a kind of early architecture. There are no walls here, but the fire makes a centre. People arrange themselves around it. Tools are placed near it. Food is cooked beside it. Children drift toward it, then fall asleep just outside the brightest light. The camp has no permanent street, no square, no temple, but tonight the hearth is all of those things in miniature. And you might wonder how often they had to make fire from nothing. The answer is not always clear. Many groups may have carefully preserved embers, carrying them from place to place in bark, fungus, ash, or other insulating materials. Starting fire by friction or sparks is possible, but it takes skill-dry materials and patience. Today we lose patience when a web page loads slowly. Here patience is the difference between a cold night and a warm one. One person lifts a bundle near the shelter entrance. Inside, protected beneath ash, a coal glows faintly. It is being saved for morning or perhaps for the next camp. You lean closer and see its red heart pulse in the dark. Such a small thing. Such a powerful thing. A dot of heat that holds tomorrow inside it. The night grows colder. You feel it in your fingers first, then your ears. Frost may gather before dawn in the grass beyond the camp. Someone pulls a hide tighter over a sleeping child. Someone else shifts closer to the flames. There is no announcement, no ceremony, only the quiet choreography of people making themselves comfortable in a difficult world. Above the stars remain vast and indifferent. Below, the fire continues its small argument against the cold. You sit between them, feeling both the ancient sky and the human warmth. This is not civilization yet. There are no cities waiting beyond the trees, but there is already community. There is already technology. There is already the deep human habit of gathering near light while the world turns dark. The flames lower again, softening into coals. The glow paints the ground in red and amber. Your breathing slows. Around you, voices fade into murmurs, then into silence. The fire does not speak exactly, but it seems to tell the oldest story humanity knows. Stay close, share warmth, keep the ember alive. By morning, the fire is no longer a flame, but a sleepy red glow hidden under ash. Someone wakes before the others and bends close, coaxing it back with dry grass and careful breath. The first light has not yet reached the camp. The air is blue, cold and still. Your fingers feel stiff inside your wrap, and when you breathe, a pale cloud leaves your mouth and disappears. You are travelling now through the deep cold of the Ice Age, when great sheets of ice cover parts of the northern world and climates shift in ways that shape every human journey. This does not mean the whole planet is frozen into one endless snowy postcard, although that would make a very dramatic travel brochure. Instead, the Ice Age world is varied. Some places are locked under glaciers, others are open steppe grassland, forest-edged desert coast or river valley. People survive by knowing these differences. The mainstream fact to carry with you is this: during the last Ice Age, lower sea levels exposed land bridges and coastlines that are now underwater. One of the most famous was Beringia, the broad region that once connected parts of Siberia and Alaska. Humans eventually moved through or around this world into the Americas, though the exact timing and routes remain among the great questions of prehistory. You leave the camp with a small group as the sky brightens. Snow lies in thin patches across the ground, not deep enough to stop walking, but enough to record every movement. Your feet press into frozen soil. Grass stems crackle beneath each step. A line of footprints trails behind you, dark at the edges where the pressure has broken the frost. The wind is gentle but sharp. It slips under hides, finds the back of your neck, and reminds you that clothing in this world is not fashion first. It is survival. Fur-hide sinew stitching layered coverings, perhaps soft inner wrappings of grass or fibre. All of it stands between skin and the long cold. You notice the smell of dressed hide smoke and human warmth trapped in the folds. It is not delicate, but it is comforting. Ahead, the land opens into a wide plain. Low hills roll beneath the pale sun. Far away dark shapes move slowly across the horizon. Herd animals. Perhaps reindeer, wild horses, bison or mammoth, depending on where in this vast Ice Age world you have stepped. The group pauses watching. No one speaks for a moment. The animals are distance, food, danger, weather sign, and future all at once. You keep walking. The snow tells stories. Here small paired prints show where a hare crossed in the night. There a bird has landed, hopped and lifted away. A deeper track belongs to something heavier. One of the hunters crouches, touches the edge of the print and studies how sharply it holds its shape. Fresh, perhaps, or not fresh enough. In a world without written signs, the ground itself is a page and every track is a sentence. Researchers still debate the exact paths early humans took during major migrations, especially into the Americas. Some argue for inland routes that opened as ice sheets retreated. Others point to coastal migration where people may have moved along shorelines rich in fish, shellfish, birds and marine mammals. The puzzle is made harder because many ancient coastal sites are now beneath the sea, which is frankly rude of the ocean, but very typical of deep time. You follow a ridge where the snow thins and stones show through. The walking is easier here. Each footstep lands with a dull crunch. The group moves in a loose line, not marching, not rushing. They know the pace needed for distance, fast enough to make progress, slow enough to read the land. A child walks beside an older woman, stepping carefully into her footprints when the ground turns icy. It is a quiet lesson. Balance. Patience. How not to fall in front of everyone, which remains a useful life skill. The landscape feels empty at first, but the longer you look, the more crowded it becomes. Tufts of dry grass shiver. A raven calls from somewhere unseen. The sun catches on ice crystals and makes the ground sparkle faintly. You smell cold stone animal dung smoke lingering in your clothing and the clean metallic scent of snow. At a shallow stream, the group stops. Thin ice has formed along the edges, clear as polished bone. Someone breaks it with a stone. Water moves underneath, dark and quick. You kneel and drink from cupped hands. It numbs your fingers and teeth. There is no ceramic cup here, no tap, no reassuring little filter light. Just cold water running because the land allows it. Beside the stream you notice something small but important. A few stones have been placed near a sheltered bank and nearby old ash stains the ground. This place has been used before, perhaps only once, perhaps many times. People do not wander randomly across these lands like lost figures in a fog. They remember safe crossings, good camps, stone sources, sheltered hollows, and places where animals pass. A lesser-known tidbit comes softly into view here. At several Ice Age sites, archaeologists have found ancient human footprints preserved in mud silt or volcanic ash. Some of these trackways show adults and children moving across landscapes, sometimes together. Footprints can feel more intimate than tools or bones. A tool tells you someone worked. A footprint tells you someone passed here with a weight direction, and a body moving through a single moment. You imagine those footprints under yours, not metaphorically but almost physically. People crossing wet ground, someone carrying a child, someone pausing, someone turning back. These are not grand monuments, but they are deeply human. No statue ever made can quite match the quiet shock of a footprint left by a person who never knew you would wonder about them. The group climbs away from the stream. The wind rises a little. It brushes loose snow across the ground in pale threads. You pull your covering tighter and glance back. Your own footprints are already softening at the edges. By evening, perhaps they will be gone. Ahead, the dark shapes on the horizon have shifted. The herd is moving. One person points not with a dramatic flourish, but with two fingers low against the body. The others look. A decision is made without many words. The group will not follow too closely now. The animals are too far the day, too uncertain, the wind not quite right. Survival often depends on not doing the exciting thing. This may disappoint adventure stories, but it has probably saved many lives. You continue across the plain as the sun lifts higher. Light spreads over the frozen grasses. A distant line of ice gleams. Near the horizon, perhaps the edge of a glacier, perhaps only snow caught on high ground. Either way, the world feels immense. There are no borders here except those made by mountains, rivers, weather, and endurance. And yet inside this vastness, people carry small familiar things. A stone blade wrapped in hide, a pouch of dried food, a child's favourite bone bead, a coal protected from last night's fire. Memory travels lightly because it must. By afternoon, clouds gather. The sky turns soft grey. Snow begins to fall, not heavily, just a slow drifting dust. It lands on hair lashes' shoulders. It muffles sound. The world becomes quieter, as if someone has lowered a blanket over the plain. Even the group's footsteps seem gentle now. You walk on, following the others through the pale air. Behind you, the campfire of last night is already part of memory. Ahead, another shelter waits to be made, another ember to be guarded, another evening to survive. The footprints stretch across the snow for a while, then blur, then fade. But the journey continues. The snow is thinned by the time you slow your pace, and the land begins to change again. The wide open plain gives way to scattered trees, their branches thin and dark against a pale sky. The air feels different here, less exposed, carrying the faint scent of bark and damp earth beneath the frost. You step over roots and patches of dead leaves, noticing how the ground softens slightly underfoot. The group pauses near a cluster of trees, not to rest completely, but to listen. This kind of place holds sound differently. Out on the open plain, noise travels far and clear. Here it folds into branches, catches in trunks, disappears and returns in strange directions. A bird calls once then again, and you realize how much attention it takes to understand where anything truly is. Before written language, before carved symbols or painted scripts, communication is already rich, layered, and precise. The background to this moment is simple in idea, though complex in detail. Early humans developed spoken language long before writing systems appeared. Writing would not emerge until much later, around 5,000 years ago, in places like Mesopotamia. But speech, gesture, tone, rhythm, and shared understanding have been shaping human connection for far longer. You notice it now in the group. No one speaks in long speeches. Instead, communication flows through small sounds, hand movements, glances, and posture. A slight tilt of the head draws attention. A soft click or hum signals agreement or caution. Fingers point briefly, then drop. Nothing is wasted. Words when used are quiet and measured. You begin to realize something subtle. Language here is not only about words, it is about timing, context, shared memory. A raised eyebrow, a shift in breathing, the way someone pauses before stepping forward. These are all part of meaning. In your modern world, you might send a message across continents in seconds. Here, meaning travels through presence. You walk a little closer to one of the older members of the group. She's watching the trees, but when a younger person hesitates near a fallen branch, she makes a soft sound, almost like a whisper of air. The younger one adjusts direction immediately. No explanation needed, the message has already arrived. Researchers continue to explore how complex early human language may have been. Some suggest that fully developed language with grammar and abstract thought appeared relatively late in human evolution. Others argue that even very early Homo sapiens had sophisticated communication systems. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, shaped by environment, group size, and social needs. You pass a narrow path between two trees. The bark brushes your arm rough and cold. You smell sap faint but sharp. A branch snaps under someone's foot and several heads turn at once. Not in alarm but in awareness. Every sound matters. Not everything is danger, but everything is information. As the group moves deeper into the trees, you begin to hear something else. Low, rhythmic sound, not quite speech, not quite song. It comes from behind you where two individuals walk side by side. One makes a soft pattern of tones rising and falling. The other responds slightly different each time. You slow slightly to listen. It feels almost like practice, or play, or memory being shaped into sound. You cannot understand the meaning, but you sense intention, pattern, repetition, variation. These are the building blocks of language, of music, of storytelling. Long before written records, knowledge travels this way, carried in voices and remembered in minds. There is an intriguing detail that appears across ancient sites. Some researchers believe that rhythm and music may have played an important role in early human communication. Bone flutes discovered in Europe, dating back tens of thousands of years, suggest that humans were making music far earlier than once thought. Imagine that. Even in a world focused on survival, there is space for sound that is not strictly necessary. Or perhaps in a deeper sense, it is necessary after all. You step over a fallen log, its surface damp and soft with decay. Your hand brushes it briefly and you feel the texture crumble slightly under your fingers. Time works differently here. Things do not last long unless they are stone. Words disappear into air. Wood returns to soil. Even footprints fade, and yet knowledge persists. The group slows again near a small clearing. Light filters through branches pale and scattered. One person crouches and touches the ground, then gestures lightly. Others gather, looking at something you cannot quite see. You lean closer. Marks. Not animal tracks this time. Not exactly. Lines in the soil. Scratches. Arranged perhaps unintentionally, perhaps not. You cannot be sure. No one treats them as decoration, but they are noticed. Remembered. This is the edge of something important. The long path towards symbolic thinking. Toward marking the world intentionally. Toward eventually recording ideas in ways that outlast a single voice. Some scholars propose that symbolic behavior like marking surfaces or creating patterns emerged gradually over tens of thousands of years. Others argue that there were sudden bursts of creativity. The debate continues, shaped by new discoveries and reinterpretations of old ones. What you're seeing now is not yet writing, but is not nothing either. The group moves on, leaving the marks behind. You follow, feeling a strange awareness settle in. Everything here is fleeting, and yet everything matters. A gesture, a sound, a shared glance. These are the threads that hold the group together. Without them, survival would be far more difficult. The trees begin to thin again as you walk. The light grows stronger. The air shifts, carrying a hint of open land beyond. Someone ahead raises a hand slightly and the group slows once more. You stop. There is no urgency, no sudden movement. Just a quiet pause, as if the land itself has spoken and everyone is listening. You stand among them, breathing slowly, aware of your own presence in this ancient rhythm. Communication here is not loud. It does not need to be. It moves like wind through branches, like breath in cold air, like memory passed from one mind to another. And as you look around, you begin to understand something simple and profound. Long before humans wrote their thoughts down, they were already sharing them. Carefully, quietly, together. The trees open slowly and you step into a wide stretch of long grass moving under the wind. The morning has warmed a little, though the air still carries a thin bite of cold. Sunlight lies across the land in pale gold bands, catching on seed heads, stones and the backs of insects that flicker briefly before vanishing. Each step brushes dry stems against your legs with a soft whispering sound. You're walking now with people who do not simply pass through the landscape. They read it. They follow signs that would seem almost invisible to someone raised among paved roads, bright signs, and small glowing maps that politely tell you when to turn left. Here the ground is the map. The wind is a clue. The birds are messengers, though not always very cooperative ones. In this world, before agriculture, hunting is not constant action. Much of it is waiting, watching, and deciding not to move too soon. People depend on wild animals for meat, fat, bone, sinew, hides and tools, but hunting large animals is difficult and risky. A widely accepted part of prehistoric life is that many foraging groups relied on a broad mix of foods rather than meat alone. Plants, fish, shellfish, eggs, insects, small animals and seasonal gatherings could all matter deeply. The old image of prehistoric people doing nothing but chasing mammoths is dramatic but incomplete. History as usual refuses to fit neatly into a movie poster. The group slows as the grass grows taller. One of the hunters raises a hand, palm low, and everyone stops. You feel the pause ripple backward through the line. No one asks why. A question would be too loud. Instead, everyone looks where he looks. They're pressed into damp soil near a patch of reeds or tracks. The hunter crouches. You crouch too careful not to lean so close that your shadow covers the print. The mark is rounded and deep at one edge. An animal passed here recently, perhaps at dawn. The grass nearby is bent. A few stems are snapped, their pale inner fibres exposed. One person touches them, then smells their fingers. Another studies the wind by lifting a pinch of dry dust and watching it drift. This is not guesswork exactly. It is knowledge built over years. You begin to feel how much patience lives inside this moment. The hunters are not rushing toward glory. They're gathering quiet information, direction, size, speed, freshness. Whether the animal is alone or with others, whether it is calm or disturbed. There is ongoing discussion among archaeologists about how prehistoric hunting strategies varied from region to region. In some places, people may have used coordinated group drives guiding animals toward natural traps, marshes, cliffs, or narrow passages. In other settings, they may have relied more on tracking ambush or repeated knowledge of animal paths. The evidence can be difficult to read because a broken bone or stone point does not always tell the whole story. The past leaves hints, not instruction manuals. You move again slowly now. The grass reaches your hands. It is dry on top but damp near the ground, and when your fingers brush it, cold droplets cling to your skin. The smell here is earthy and animal, mixed with crushed stems and distant water. Somewhere ahead a lark rises in a flutter and calls into the open sky. The group spreads slightly. Not far enough to lose sight of one another, but enough to cover more ground. A younger hunter walks near you holding a wooden spear with a carefully shaped point. It may be hardened by fire or tipped with stone or bone, depending on the place and period you're imagining. The shaft is smooth from handling. His grip is relaxed, but his eyes are sharp. You notice another object carried in a hide wrap. A set of small stone points, perhaps replacements, perhaps tools for repair. Hunting does not begin when an animal appears. It begins long before, at the fire beside the shelter with stone, wood, sinew and time. A point breaks, a binding loosens, a shaft warps. Every tool has to be made, checked, carried and trusted. A lesser-known detail hides in the tools themselves. Some prehistoric hunters used adhesives made from natural materials such as birch tar or plant resins to help attach stone points to handles or shafts. Making these glues could require careful heating and preparation. It is a wonderfully humbling thought. Long before hardware stores, people were already dealing with the ancient problem of keeping one thing stuck firmly to another. Humanity has always had projects. The wind shifts. At once the group pauses. You feel it on your cheek turning cooler from the side. One hunter lowers his body slightly and the others follow. The reason becomes clear after a moment. If the wind carries human scent toward the animals, the chance is gone. The group changes direction, moving in a slow curve. No one complains. The land makes the rules. You follow through a shallow dip where the grass is greener. The ground squelches underfoot. A dragonfly flashes blue near a small pool, then disappears. In the mud, more tracks appear. Smaller ones now, perhaps young animals. The mood of the group shifts not with excitement exactly, but with focus. You sense the tightening of attention. Far ahead between waves of grass something moves, a brown back, then another. The animals are grazing heads down. You cannot tell how many. The grass hides and reveals them in pieces, a shoulder, a horn, a flicking ear. The group freezes. Even your breathing seems too loud. Time stretches. A fly hums near your face. You resist the modern, deeply sophisticated urge to swat it with great drama. The hunter beside you watches the animals without blinking. A bead of sweat slides down his temple despite the cool air, and then softly the group lowers to the ground. You do the same. The earth is cold through your clothing. Dry grass presses against your cheek. You smell soil, old leaves, and the faint musk of animals. The world narrows to tiny things. The movement of grass, the direction of wind, the distance between bodies, the slight creak of a spear shaft as someone adjusts their grip. No one charges. No one shouts. For a long while nothing happens. This too is hunting. Not the dramatic final moment, but the quiet before a decision. The animals drift farther away slowly, calmly, just out of reach. The lead hunter watches them go. His expression does not collapse in disappointment. He simply studies where they are heading. Perhaps not today. Perhaps later. Perhaps the group will follow at a distance, learning their path. Perhaps they will return tomorrow. Survival is not one grand attempt. It is many careful chances. You rise only when the others rise. Bits of grass cling to your clothing. Your knees are damp. The animals are now dark specks in the distance, moving toward low hills where afternoon shadow waits. The group turns toward a sheltered place near the reeds. There will be other work to do. Repairs, gathering, watching, remembering. Meat would have been welcome, of course. Fat even more so in a cold world where calories are precious. But hunger is handled with patience, not panic. As you walk back through the grass, you begin to understand that these hunters are not defined by violence. They are defined by attention, by restraint, by skill, by knowing when not to act. The sun lowers slightly, warming the tops of the grass until the whole plain glows. Behind you, the tracks remain in the mud, already softening at the edges. Ahead, smoke may soon rise from another fire. You keep walking with the group, listening to the wind pass through the long grass like a quiet voice telling an old story. By the time the sun begins to lean westward, the hunting path has softened into something quieter. The animals have moved beyond reach, and no one treats this as failure. The group simply adjusts because life before fields and barns is not built around one plan. It is built around many small possibilities gathered patiently across the day. You follow several members of the group away from the tall grass and toward lower ground where shrubs cluster near a stream and the air smells greener. This is the gathering path, and it is just as important as the hunt, perhaps more important on many days. The people around you know that survival does not always arrive with hooves and horns. Sometimes it hides beneath leaves, inside roots, under bark, or in a patch of berries that ripens for only a short time before birds discover it and become frankly very smug about the whole thing. The wider world around you is still the world before agriculture. There are no planted fields, no fenced orchards, no mills grinding grain in the distance. Yet this does not mean people are helplessly waiting for nature to be generous. Foragers often managed their landscapes with skill memory and careful timing. They knew which plants appeared after rain, which nuts could be stored, which roots needed soaking or cooking, and which bright little berry was best left alone unless you wanted a very educational afternoon. One well-established truth about ancient foraging life is that plant food supplied a major part of the human diet in many environments. Meat mattered especially where cold climates made fat and protein precious, but gathered foods were often steady, varied and nutritionally important. The old stereotype of men hunting while everyone else sits politely near a cave wall is much too simple. Gathering required deep expertise, and it kept people alive. You walk beside an older woman who carries a woven container against her hip. It may be made of bark, reeds, grass, or flexible twigs. Objects like this rarely survive for archaeologists to find because baskets decay and vanish into soil. But they must have existed in many forms because hands need ways to carry what the land provides. A person can only hold so many roots before becoming, in a very ancient sense, overbooked. She pauses near a patch of low plants and kneels. You kneel beside her. The leaves are dull green with a faint silver underside. She touches one, then points to the base where the soil has cracked slightly. A digging stick appears in her hand, smooth and dark from use. She presses it into the ground and works slowly, loosening the earth. The smell rises rich and damp, cold soil, roots, faint rot, life hidden underground. After a few careful movements, she pulls up a tuber pale and knotted with threads of root clinging to it. It does not look impressive. In a modern shop, you might pass it by, unfairly judging its personality based on its appearance. Here it is food, and food has beauty. She rubs away some soil, inspects it, and places it into the basket. The younger people watch. One child reaches for another plant nearby, and the woman gently stops the hand. She taps the wrong leaf, then the right one. Similar shape, different plant. The child nods with serious concentration. This is school, though no one calls it that. No desks, no chalk, no one asking whether this will be on the exam. The exam is simply living. Interpretations vary on how much plant knowledge shaped early human movement and settlement. Some researchers emphasize large animal hunting as a key driver of mobility, especially in Ice Age landscapes. Others place more weight on seasonal plant cycles, arguing that roots, nuts, fruits and seeds drew people back to particular places year after year. The evidence is uneven because plants leave fewer traces than stone tools or bones. Still, the more archaeologists look, the more visible the gathered world becomes. You move farther along the stream, water whispers over stones, a dragonfly skims the surface. The ground is softer here and reeds grow thick near the bank. Someone cuts several long stems with a sharp flake of stone, then lays them carefully in a bundle. They may become mats baskets, bindings, bedding, or fuel. Nothing is merely scenery. Every plant has potential, and every potential use is remembered. The air carries the smell of wet leaves and sun-warmed mud. Insects hum in the grass. A bird makes a sudden harsh cry from the shrub, startling you more than it should. The others barely react. Ancient dignity, it seems, includes not jumping dramatically at birds. Near a patch of thorny bushes, the group slows. Small, dark berries cluster among the leaves. One person tastes one, waits, then nods. Others begin picking. The berries stain fingertips purple. Their skins are taut and cool, bursting softly between your teeth with a sharp sweetness. You eat only a few because most go into containers. The group does not gather like people strolling through a market. They gather with purpose. A less familiar detail from prehistoric food history is that people may have processed some wild plants extensively before eating them. Grinding stones, pounding tools, and residues on ancient implements show that seeds, grains, and tubers were sometimes crushed, soaked, roasted, or leached to make them safer or more digestible. Long before formal farming, humans were already experimenting with food preparation, which means the ancient kitchen, though lacking cabinets, and that one drawer full of mysterious utensils was very much alive. You watch someone place a handful of bitter-looking seeds into a small pouch. These will not be eaten immediately. They may need drying. They may need grinding. They may be mixed with something else. The knowledge is not written anywhere, but it is held in bodies, in repeated motions, in stories told while hands work. The gathering path bends uphill away from the stream into a drier patch where nut trees stand scattered. The season matters here. Perhaps it is late summer or early autumn, or a milder interval in a cold world. Shells crack underfoot old ones from earlier visits. A few people search the ground carefully. Nuts are gathered, tested, sorted. Some are discarded. Others are placed into containers lined with leaves. You pick one up. Its shell is hard-ridged cool in your palm. It seems small, but you understand why it matters. Stored food changes the feeling of time. It makes tomorrow less frightening. A pouch of nuts, a bundle of dried roots, berries spread near smoke to preserve them. These are quiet promises against hunger. The group stops beneath the trees to rest. The shade is thin and trembling. You sit on a fallen branch, feeling the rough bark press through your clothing. Your hands smell of berries and soil. Someone passes you a strip of dried meat from an earlier hunt, tough and smoky. You chew slowly, mixing its saltless richness with the memory of berries. A meal here is not arranged in courses. It is assembled from whatever the day and season allow, and you begin to notice the social rhythm of gathering. People talk more here than on the hunt, though still softly. Children ask questions. Older people correct them. Small jokes pass through the group. Someone laughs under their breath. Knowledge moves easily when danger feels distant. Modern life often separates food from landscape. You open a package, press a button, scan a label, and dinner appears with only mild emotional negotiation. Here, food is memory made physical. You know where it grows, when it ripens, how it smells when ready, how it changes after rain, who first taught you to find it. As afternoon deepens, the baskets grow heavier. Shoulders shift. Hands adjust straps. No one takes everything. Some plants are left behind. Some roots are too small. Some berries remain for birds, animals, and future growth. Whether by rule habit or practical wisdom, the group does not strip the place bare. They need the land to keep speaking tomorrow. You follow them back toward the place where smoke may soon rise again. The light has turned warmer, brushing the shrubs with gold. The stream behind you continues its soft conversation over stones. In the basket beside you, roots knock gently against nuts and reed stems. Such ordinary sounds, such ancient music. The hunt may bring drama, but gathering brings continuity. It is the slow, steady work of knowing the world in detail. It is hands in soil, eyes on leaves, children learning what can be trusted. It is the quiet truth that humanity survived not only by chasing across open plains, but by kneeling close to the ground and noticing what was there. You walk on, carrying the scent of crushed berries and damp earth with you, while evening begins to gather gently in the trees. By the time the group returns to a place suitable for rest, the light has softened into the quiet gold of evening. The wind has dropped and the air feels heavier, carrying the faint warmth of the day that is slowly slipping away. You follow as they choose a slight rise in the land, not too exposed, not too low where cold air might settle. It is a careful balance. Even choosing where to sleep is a kind of knowledge. There is no permanent structure waiting here. No door to open, no familiar room. Everything that will become shelter must be made again, even if the place has been used before. And yet the process begins without hesitation, as though the shapes already exist in memory. You set down what you carry and watch as the group begins to work. Some gather long branches, testing each one with a quick bend before accepting or discarding it. Others bring armfuls of grass, dry leaves, and flexible stems. A few begin clearing the ground, brushing away stones, sharp debris, and anything that might make the night less comfortable than it already will be. Comfort in this world is relative. A flat patch of earth is a luxury. The broader human story behind this moment is straightforward but deeply important. Early humans did not live in permanent houses for most of prehistory. Instead, they built temporary shelters using whatever materials were available. These could be simple windbreaks, lean-tos, or more complex structures made from wood, bone hides, and earth. Evidence of such shelters has been found in various parts of the world, though often only in fragments because organic materials do not preserve well over time. You notice how quickly the structure takes shape. Several branches are set upright, angled inward to meet at a point forming a rough frame. Cross pieces are added, tied, or wedged into place. Over this skeleton, hides are stretched and secured. In some places, grass and reeds are layered to fill gaps, blocking wind and holding warmth. The shelter is not tall. You cannot stand fully inside it, but that is not the goal. Smaller spaces hold heat better. The smell of hide and dried grass fills the air as the structure grows. Your hands brush against the materials, rough and fibrous, cool at first, then warming as they absorb the touch. There is a quiet satisfaction in watching something take shape, so directly without tools that hum or machines that require instructions longer than the actual task. A small detail catches your attention. Near the entrance, someone places a few stones in a loose line. Not for decoration, but to mark the threshold, perhaps to hold down edges, perhaps simply because this is how it has always been done. These little choices repeated over time become habits that shape how people build and live. Some researchers studying prehistoric dwellings have suggested that even temporary shelters could be surprisingly well organized. The placement of hearth sleeping areas, tool-making spots and waste zones hints at a kind of internal order. It may not resemble a modern floor plan, but it reflects intention. People do not just collapse into any space, they arrange it. You step inside one of the nearly finished shelters. The ground has been covered with a layer of grass, softening it slightly. When you sit, you feel the unevenness beneath, but it is far better than bare earth. The interior smells warm and enclosed, already holding traces of human presence. Outside, the fire is being rebuilt. Stones are placed in a circle and the ember carried from earlier is brought forward, coaxed back into flame. Smoke rises straight up at first, then drifts as the air cools. The light flickers against the newly made shelters, casting shadows that make them seem larger than they are. A lesser-known piece of evidence from ancient sites reveals that in some Ice Age regions, people constructed shelters using mammoth bones. Large curved tusks and massive ribs were arranged to form frames then covered with hides. These structures must have been impressive both in scale and in the effort required to build them. It is a reminder that even without permanent buildings, human ingenuity shaped the environment in remarkable ways. You imagine such a structure briefly, then return your attention to the one before you. Smaller, simpler, but no less meaningful. A child crawls into the shelter and lies down, testing the space with a quiet seriousness. An adult adjusts the covering, tucking in a loose edge to block a draft. Another person adds more grass inside, building up a softer layer. These small adjustments continue until the space feels right. Not perfect, but sufficient. As evening deepens, the temperature drops again. You feel it first in your hands, then along your shoulders. The fire becomes more than comfort. It becomes necessary. People gather round it once more, but now there is a sense of completion. The day's work has shaped the night. There is an interesting question that lingers among those who study early human life. How long did groups stay in one place before moving on? The answer is not fixed. Some camps may have been used for only a night or two, while others were revisited many times over seasons or years. Patterns of movement depended on resources, weather, and the needs of the group. Flexibility was not a choice, it was survival. You sit near the entrance of the shelter, watching the firelight flicker across faces that are both unfamiliar and deeply recognizable. The baskets filled earlier are set close, their contents sorted and protected. Tools are placed within easy reach. Nothing is left carelessly. Everything has a place, even if that place is simply near someone who remembers where it is. The sky above darkened stars appearing one by one. The shelters low and rounded seem to settle into the land as if they belong there. And in a way they do. Not as permanent marks, but as temporary expressions of human presence. You think about the idea of home. In your world, home is often a fixed location, a structure that remains while you move in and out of it. Here, home is something you build, carry and recreate again and again. It is not tied to a single place, but to people, to knowledge, to the ability to shape the environment just enough to rest safely within it. The fire crackles softly. Someone adds another piece of wood. Sparks rise and fade into the dark. Inside the shelter, the grass rustles as someone settles down. Outside, the night stretches wide and quiet. There are no walls beyond these thin coverings, no locks, no barriers that cannot be crossed. and yet within this small space there is a sense of enclosure, of belonging. You step inside once more and sit down, drawing your covering close. The ground is still uneven, the air still cool, but the space holds warmth now. It holds breath, presence, shared existence. And as you lean back, listening to the faint sounds of the camp, you begin to understand something simple. Home in this age is not a place you find. It is a place you make. Morning comes softly, not with an alarm, not with a phone glowing beside your face, not with the cheerful violence of a notification, but with pale light pressing through the shelter covering. You wake to the smell of smoke, damp grass, and warm bodies sleeping close against the cold. Somewhere outside, a bird begins to call, then another answers from farther away. The camp stirs in layers, first the older adults, then the people responsible for the fire, then the children who seem to wake either all at once or not at all, a pattern that has apparently survived every age of humanity. One child crawls from the shelter with hair tangled from sleep and a hide wrap slipping off one shoulder. Another sits near the entrance, rubbing their eyes with the back of a dirty hand, watching the adults with the solemn expression of someone considering whether mourning is truly necessary. You step outside, the air is cool and fresh. Dew clings to grass stems shining in the low light. The fire is coaxed awake again and smoke rises in a thin blue stream. The shelters look smaller in daylight, more practical than magical, yet somehow more touching. They have done their work, they kept the wind away, they held the night at a distance. Children move through the camp, but not apart from life. There is no separate nursery, no classroom, no plastic box of approved educational toys. The whole world is a lesson which sounds beautiful until you remember that the world includes thorns, cold streams, sharp tools, and animals with opinions. Childhood here is not careless freedom. It is guided watching, trying, copying, and being corrected before a mistake becomes dangerous. One secure point from anthropology and archaeology is that children were always part of prehistoric life, even when the surviving evidence tends to highlight adult tools, hunting, and dramatic survival. Their bones, footprints, handprints, and wear patterns on small objects remind us that ancient camps were not just places of adults working grimly under grey skies. They were family spaces full of learning, play, crying, teasing, and probably at least one child being told not to put that in their mouth. You notice a young child sitting beside an adult who is repairing a hide covering. The adult uses a pointed bone tool to pierce holes along an edge, then thread sinew through with practiced fingers. The child holds a scrap of hide and a duller tool imitating the motion with deep concentration. The stitches are uneven if they can be called stitches at all. Still, the adult glances over and gives a quiet, approving sound. This is how skill enters the body. Not from a lecture, not from a chart, from watching the same motion many times, then trying it badly, then trying it a little less badly. A few steps away, older children are playing near a patch of soft earth. At first it looks like simple chasing, but you soon notice patterns. One child crouches and moves silently through grass, pretending to stalk another. Another throws a small stick at a mark on the ground. They laugh when it misses. Then they try again. The game is playful, but the skills are real. Balance, aim, silence, reading movement, knowing when to freeze. Specialists who study childhood in prehistory often point out that play may have been a major way children learned adult tasks. There's room for disagreement about how much we can infer from scattered artifacts and footprints, but the idea feels sensible here, watching small bodies rehearse the movements of survival without yet carrying the full weight of it. The sun climbs higher, warming the camp. The smell of roasting roots drifts from the fire. Someone cracks nuts with a stone, slow and steady. Tap, tap, tap. Shell fragments collect in a small pile. A child reaches for one of the stones and an adult redirects the hand toward a safer one. No fuss, no speech needed. The correction is quick and calm. You sit nearby and watch two children examine a piece of red ochre. One rubs it against a flat stone, leaving a dusty streak of colour. The other touches the powder, then presses a fingertip to their own arm, making a mark. They stare at it with quiet satisfaction. It may be play. It may be imitation. It may be the beginning of decoration identity or ritual. With ancient children, as with modern children, the line between serious and silly can be wonderfully thin. A small but fascinating clue from Ice Age caves is that some hand stencils and finger markings may have been made by children or adolescents. In certain caves, researchers have studied the size of handprints and the height of markings on walls, suggesting that young people took part in making images or marks. It is a gentle reminder that prehistoric art was not only the work of solemn adults having profound thoughts in torchlight. Sometimes, perhaps someone young reached out and left a hand on stone because the wall was there and the pigment was beautiful. Later in the morning, you walk with a few children and adults toward the stream. The path is familiar now, worn lightly through grass and low plants. The children carry small containers, not heavy ones. They're trusted with tasks suited to their strength. One gathers dry sticks. Another searches for edible leaves under guidance. A third watches insects skimming the water and forgets the task completely for several breaths, which is fair. Insects are doing a lot. At the stream, the air is cooler. Water moves over stones with a soft glassy sound. The children kneel at the edge, careful not to slip. An adult shows them where the bank is firm and where mud will swallow a foot. One child steps too close anyway and sinks ankle deep with a wet sound. There is a brief silence, then quiet laughter. The child looks offended by the mud as though personally betrayed. You feel the humour ripple through the group. It is soft, not loud, but it matters. These people are not only surviving, they are living. They are amused, tired, affectionate, impatient, proud. The ancient world is not a museum case. It has moods. The child is helped free and the muddy foot is rinsed in the stream. Cold water splashes. The child gasps, then laughs too. The moment passes into the day, leaving no artifact, no trace, nothing for future scholars to catalogue. Yet it feels as real as any stone tool. As you return toward camp, an older child walks beside you, carrying dry sticks. Their face is serious now, focused on not dropping the bundle. The sticks smell faintly of bark and dust. Each one will help feed the fire later. A small task, yes, but small tasks are how children become part of the group. You begin to understand that growing up here means learning the world through closeness. Children sleep near adults, eat near adults, work near adults, wander under watchful eyes. They absorb the names of plants, the moods of animals, the shape of weather, the rules of sharing the danger of certain places. They learn who comforts, who teaches, who jokes, who remembers the best route when snow covers the ground. And like children everywhere, they also test limits. They poke ash. They wander too far. They ask without words to be carried. They cling when tired. They fall asleep at inconvenient times. Humanity, it turns out, did not wait for civilization to invent exhaustion. Afternoon light settles over the camp. The children's energy begins to soften. One sits against an adult's side, chewing slowly. Another lies on the grass near the shelter eyelids, heavy, still holding a small stick, as if it is a treasure. The fire crackles. A hide is stretched for drying. Voices murmur. You look at the camp and see the future hidden inside it. Not cities, not yet, not fields or walls or written records, but the deeper future, the one carried in young hands learning old skills. Every generation survives because the next one watches closely enough to remember. The child with the ochre mark has fallen asleep now, the faint red streak still visible on their arm. It catches the evening light for a moment, soft and warm before shadow moves across it. And in that small mark you feel the quiet continuity of human life. A child waking, a child learning, a child dreaming beside the fire. By late afternoon the camp begins to settle into a quieter rhythm, but your path does not remain beside the shelters. A few members of the group prepare to walk toward the low hills beyond the stream, where dark openings mark the limestone face. The children watch with interest, but only some are allowed to come. Others remain near the fire, sleepy from the day, wrapped in hide and smoke. You follow the small group as the light turns amber. The ground rises gently, scattered with stones and hardy shrubs. Wind moves through dry grass with a soft rushing sound. The smell of the camp fades behind you, replaced by cold rock, damp earth, and the faint mineral scent that seems to come from places where sunlight does not often enter. Ahead, the cave mouth waits in shadow. The world outside is open, changing, full of weather. The cave feels different before you even step inside. It is not a house, not exactly, and not simply a shelter either. It is a threshold. The air near the entrance is cooler. Sound changes here, becoming rounder, deeper. A footstep returns to you. A breath seems larger than it should. Long before writing people in many parts of the world made images on cave walls, rock faces, and portable objects. Some of the most famous painted caves in Europe date to the Upper Paleolithic tens of thousands of years ago, though rock art exists across many regions and periods. These images often show animals, handmarks, signs, and patterns. They're among the most powerful traces of early human imagination. A torch is lit from a protected ember. Its flame wavers in the cave mouth, bright against the blue evening outside. Someone carries it inward and the walls wake slowly. You step inside. The ground is uneven, damp in places. Your fingers brush the stone wall and it feels cold, slightly slick, textured by tiny ridges. Drops of water fall somewhere deeper within, one at a time, each sound echoing softly. The air smells of wet stone smoke and old darkness. The torchlight moves and suddenly shapes appear. At first they seem like stains, then they gather into bodies. A curved back, a horn, a lifted head, a line of legs. Animals emerge from the wall as if they have been waiting there, hidden until fire returned. The flame makes them shift and tremble. A painted bison seems to breathe. A horse appears to step forward. A mammoth, huge and quiet, leans out of shadow. You stand still. It is easy in a modern room to think of art as decoration, something framed politely and hung above furniture. Here in the dark, decoration feels too small a word. These images are not casual ornaments. They are placed in depths where torchlight must be carried, where smoke gathers on ceilings, where voices echo and bodies move carefully. They ask for effort. Different explanations have been offered for Paleolithic cave art. Some researchers see hunting magic, others suggest storytelling, teaching spiritual practice, memory identity, or a mixture of meanings we may never fully recover. The difficulty is that the paintings remain, but the voices that explain them are gone. The walls show us the images, not the reasons. You notice a hand stencil near the animals. It is simple and startling. A human hand once pressed against the stone while pigment was blown or dabbed around it, leaving the shape behind. The person is gone. The hand remains as absence outlined in colour. You lift your own hand near it, not touching, only hovering close. The size is not so different. That is the quiet shock of it. Across tens of thousands of years, a hand still looks like a hand. Fingers spread, palm open, a gesture of presence. I was here perhaps, or we were here, or something stranger and deeper that does not translate neatly into words. A lesser-known detail hides in the pigments themselves. Some prehistoric artists used minerals like ochre, manganese, charcoal, and clay, sometimes grinding them into powders and mixing them with water, fat, or other binders. In certain places they may have used hollow bones or reeds to blow pigment onto walls. Imagine the patience of preparing colour in a dark cave, the powder staining lips and fingertips, the torch smoke curling overhead. Not exactly a clean studio, but then again inspiration has never been especially tidy. The group moves deeper, and you follow slowly. The torch casts light over natural bulges in the stone. You notice how some painted animals use these contours. A swell in the wall becomes a shoulder, a crack becomes a line of movement. The artist did not simply place an image onto blank stone. They saw something already there and drew it out. The cave narrows. You duck slightly. The air grows colder. A child behind you whispers a sound of surprise, and an adult rests a hand on their shoulder. The gesture is calming, but also perhaps instructive. Be quiet here. Look carefully. Remember, on one wall several animals overlap. Their lines cross and blur, made at different times, perhaps by different hands. One image may be older, another added later. The wall becomes a gathering of moments layered like memory. You wonder how many visits are held here. How many torches? How many breaths? How many people standing just where you stand, seeing the same animal shapes move in flame? There is no easy way to know who made each image. Men, women, adolescents, children, specialists, ordinary members of the group. Perhaps many kinds of people over many generations. Studies of hand stencils have even raised questions about the sex and age of some makers, though such interpretations are debated and not always secure. The past offers clues, then politely refuses to settle every argument. You hear a low voice begin behind you. Not a speech, not a lecture. A murmuring pattern, almost a chant. The sound fills the cave differently than it would outside. It hums against stone. It seems to come from in front, behind and above all at once. The painted animals flicker. Shadows move like living things. You are not frightened. The mood is solemn but gentle. The darkness is deep yet held by the torch. This is not a place of panic. It is a place of attention. You think back to the fire circle, to the children learning to the tracks in snow, to the gathered berries staining fingertips. All of those moments belong to survival. But this belongs to something more difficult to name, meaning perhaps wonder, relationship with the unseen, wish to remember, a wish to speak beyond the body. The torch burns lower, its smell thickens, smoky and oily. Someone lifts it closer to a painted horse, and the horse seems to ripple across the uneven wall. For a breath you understand why these images endure in the imagination. They are still, but they're not lifeless. Outside evening has deepened. You can see the cave entrance far behind you now, a dim grey shape. The world of grass, wind and open sky waits there. But in here time feels folded. You stand with people who have no writing, no cities, no monuments of cut stone, and yet they have made something that carries their presence farther than they could ever know. Eventually the group turns back. You walk toward the entrance, slowly reluctant to leave the painted dark. The air warms slightly as you near the outside. The first stars are visible beyond the cave mouth. Behind you, the animals vanish again into shadow, not gone, only sleeping in stone until another flame returns. When you step back into the evening, the world feels larger and quieter. The wind touches your face. Smoke from the torch trails upward and disappears. And somewhere behind you in the dark, ancient hands remain open on the wall. When you return from the cave, the night has settled fully over the land. The camp glows softly in the distance, a small circle of firelight resting against the dark. The air feels colder now, sharper on your skin, and the smell of smoke reaches you before the shapes of the shelters come into view. You step back into the familiar rhythm of the camp, but something feels slightly different. Perhaps it is the memory of the cave or the images still moving faintly in your mind. The animals on the wall seemed still yet alive. Now as you look at the tools laid out beside the fire, you begin to notice a similar quiet presence in them. These are not just objects. They are shaped in tension. You sit near the fire where a few people are working with stone. The light flickers across their hands as they hold pieces of flint chert or another workable rock. One person grips a rounded hammerstone and strikes carefully at the edge of a larger piece. A sharp crack splits the air. A flake breaks free, thin and bright, falling into the dust. Another strike. Another flake. The rhythm is slow and deliberate. This is not forceful smashing. It is control. Angle pressure timing. You watch closely, noticing how the toolmaker turns the stone slightly between strikes, shaping it bit by bit. A well-established point in human history is that stone tools have been used for millions of years, long before modern humans appeared. By the time of early Homo sapiens, tool-making techniques had become more refined, with carefully shaped blades, points and scrapers. These tools allowed people to cut meat, prepare hides, carve wood, and perform countless other tasks essential to daily life. You lean closer, careful not to disturb the process. A newly struck flake is picked up and examined, its edges razor sharp even by modern standards. The maker runs a thumb lightly along the side, not the edge testing its form. Then with a smaller tool they begin to refine it further, removing tiny pieces to shape the edge more precisely. You begin to understand that each tool is not made in a single moment. It is the result of many decisions. Where to strike, how hard, which piece to keep, which to discard. Mistakes happen, of course. A strike goes wrong and a piece snaps in an unintended way. The maker pauses, studies it, then either adapts or sets it aside. Nearby, a small pile of discarded flakes glitters faintly in the firelight. They look random at first, but when you look closer you see patterns, curved edges, sharp points. Some may be used as tools themselves. Others are simply the byproducts of shaping something more refined. There is an interesting detail that emerges from archaeological studies. In some ancient sites, researchers have found evidence that certain individuals were highly skilled toolmakers, producing more refined and consistent tools than others. This suggests that even in small groups there may have been differences in expertise, perhaps even early forms of specialization. You watch one such skilled individual at work now. Their movements are confident, economical. They waste little motion. Each strike seems to follow an internal plan, even if that plan is not spoken. A younger person sits nearby, observing closely. Occasionally the elder pauses and gestures, indicating where the next strike should land. The younger one tries, hesitates, then strikes. The result is imperfect, but not useless. Learning continues. Always learning. There is also an ongoing discussion among researchers about how knowledge of toolmaking was passed down. Some suggest it required direct teaching, demonstration and practice over long periods. Others consider whether imitation alone could account for the spread of these techniques. Watching this moment, it seems likely that both played a role: observation, correction, repetition. The same quiet pattern you saw with children learning earlier. The firelight catches on the edges of the tools, making them gleam briefly before fading back into shadow. Each piece carries a story, not written, but embedded in its shape. The angle of a cut, the curve of a blade, the smoothness of a grip worn by use. You pick up a finished tool with permission given by a small nod. It fits into your hand naturally. The weight is balanced. The edge is sharp enough to slice through hide or plant fibre with ease. You imagine using it cutting, scraping, shaping. It feels like an extension of the hand, not separate from it. That may be one of the most remarkable aspects of early tools. They are not distant machines. They are close, direct, responsive. They connect body and task in a way that feels immediate. A quieter, lesser-known aspect of stone tools is that some were transported over long distances, suggesting that people either travelled far or exchanged materials with other groups. Certain types of stone, prized for their quality, have been found far from their original sources. This hints at networks of movement and connection that stretch beyond a single camp. You imagine a tool like the one in your hand passing from one place to another, carried carefully, valued not just for its function but for the effort it represents. The fire crackles, sparks rise and vanish. Around you the camp settles into evening. Food is shared, voices murmur, the shelters hold warmth. And here beside the fire hands continue to shape stone into something useful, something lasting. You return the tool gently and watch as it is placed with others ready for tomorrow. In this world nothing is taken for granted. Every object must be made, every skill must be learned, every edge must be shaped by hand. And as you sit there listening to the steady rhythm of stone against stone, you begin to see that these tools are more than survival. They are memory made solid. The night deepens again, and the fire settles into a steady glow, its warmth pressing gently against the cool darkness beyond. You sit a little farther back this time, watching not just the flames, but the horizon beyond them. There is something out there tonight, not close, not immediate, but present, but A low sound travels across the land. At first, it feels like part of the wind, a distant shifting of air. Then it comes again, heavier this time, a deep resonant call that seems to move through the ground as much as through the air. The group notices. No one panics. No one jumps to their feet. But heads turn and eyes narrow slightly, focusing on the dark edge of the plain where shadows gather. You follow their gaze. There, faint against the starlight, a shape moves. Then another. Large, slow, quiet in a way that feels almost impossible for something so massive. You are looking at giants. Mammoths, or perhaps another kind of large Ice Age animal, moving across the distant land with a calm, steady rhythm. Their outlines rise and fall as they walk long tusks catching the faintest glimmer of light. They do not hurry. They do not seem aware of the small human presence watching from afar. You feel a strange mix of awe and distance. These creatures are not myth. They're a real part of the same world as you, sharing the same cold air, the same ground. It is widely understood that humans and large Ice Age animals lived alongside one another for thousands of years. Mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant deer, and other megafauna were not distant legends to early humans. They were neighbours, sometimes prey, sometimes danger, always significant. You lean forward, slightly drawn to the slow movement of the herd. The ground seems to carry their weight even from this distance. A faint vibration reaches you more felt than heard. Someone near you makes a soft sound, and not quite a word, but something close. It carries meaning, attention, respect. These animals are not approached casually. Hunting them when it happened required planning, coordination, and a great deal of risk. A creature that large does not fall easily. Even a successful hunt could be dangerous, and failure could mean injury or worse. It's likely that many groups relied on opportunities rather than constant pursuit, perhaps targeting weaker individuals or taking advantage of natural traps and difficult terrain. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about how frequently humans hunted large animals like mammoths. Some evidence suggests that such hunts did occur with bones and tools found together. Other perspectives suggest that these events may have been relatively rare, with scavenging or opportunistic hunting playing a larger role than once believed. You watch the herd move. A smaller figure stays close to a larger one, perhaps a young animal, guided by the steady presence beside it. The group moves as a unit, slow and deliberate, each step placed with quiet certainty. Their breath rises in faint clouds, barely visible in the cold air. The humans around you do not move closer. They observe. That is enough. There is something deeply grounding in this moment. The distance between you and the animals is not just physical. It is a boundary of understanding, of respect, of knowing when not to cross. A quieter detail emerges from what researchers have found. Some archaeological sites suggest that mammoth bones were used for more than just food. In certain regions, bones and tusks were arranged into structures or used as building materials. This means that even after death, these animals continue to shape human life in practical ways. You imagine the transformation, a living giant crossing the plain. Later, perhaps its bones forming part of a shelter, holding back wind, supporting hides, creating a space for warmth and rest. Life becoming structure, movement becoming memory. The herd begins to shift direction, turning slightly as if guided by something unseen. Perhaps the wind, perhaps the scent of water, perhaps knowledge passed through generations of their own kind, just as humans pass knowledge among themselves. You notice how similar the patterns are. Movement guided by memory. Paths repeated, adjusted, remembered. The distance between human and animal narrows not in space, but in understanding. The fire crackles beside you, grounding you in the present. The warmth touches your hands, your face. Behind you, the shelters hold sleeping bodies. Ahead, the herd continues its slow passage across the land. No one speaks. There is no need. The moment carries its own weight. You feel it settle into you, this quiet awareness of sharing the world with beings so large, so ancient, so steady in their existence. And you begin to understand something else. These animals are not just part of the landscape. They are part of the story. A story of survival, of coexistence, of careful distance and occasional closeness. The herd moves farther now, their shapes fading into the darkness. The sound of their movement softens, then disappears entirely. Only the memory remains lingering in the minds of those who watched. One person shifts slightly, adding a piece of wood to the fire. The flames rise for a moment, then settle again. The circle of light feels small compared to the vastness beyond it, but it is enough. It has always been enough. You sit back, letting the warmth reach you as the night deepens once more. The stars continue their quiet watch overhead, unchanged by the passing of animals or people. And somewhere out there, beyond the reach of firelight, the giants walk on. After the mammoths fade into the dark, the camp becomes very still. Not silent. Never silent. The ancient night has too many small voices for that. But still in the way, people become still when they are listening together. The fire lowers, and the circle of light tightens around you, pulling faces, tools, baskets, and shelter edges into a soft amber glow. Beyond that circle, the land turns black and silver beneath the stars. You sit close enough to feel warmth on your shins, but your back is cold. That half-warm, half-chilled feeling seems to belong to this world. One side of you faces human comfort. The other side faces the enormous dark. There are no walls here thick enough to shut the night away. No glass windows, no locked doors, no neat little porch light that convinces you the outside has been politely managed. The camp is open to wind scent, sound, and shadow. Its safety comes from fire numbers, knowledge, and attention. Night in the deep past is not empty. It is crowded with life. Many animals move after sunset, hunting, feeding, calling, testing the edges of the human camp. Some are small and harmless, some are not. A well-supported part of prehistoric life is that early humans shared landscapes with large predators, including big cats, hyenas, wolves, bears, and other carnivores depending on the region and time period. People were hunters, yes, but they were also vulnerable bodies in a world with teeth. A twig snaps beyond the firelight. Everyone hears it. Your own body reacts before thought does. Shoulders tighten. Breath pauses. The people beside you do not leap up. They listen. One person slowly reaches for a spear. Another turns their head toward the sound, eyes narrowed, face calm. The fire pops, sending sparks upward, and for a moment the shadows jump across the ground. And then comes a rustle, low, brief. Perhaps only a small animal in the grass. Perhaps something sniffing at scraps near the edge of camp. The uncertainty is the point. In this world, imagination is not entertainment alone. It is part of staying alive. The mind asks, what could that be? How close is it? Is it alone? Is the wind carrying our scent toward it, or its scent toward us? There is a long-standing discussion among archaeologists and anthropologists about how much predation pressure shaped human behavior. Some emphasize the danger posed by large carnivores and the importance of group-living fire and weapons. Others warn that we should not imagine ancient people living in constant terror, because they understood their environments with a confidence most modern people do not possess. Both ideas can sit together in the same firelight. The night is dangerous and the people are not helpless. You hear a distant howl. It rises thin and wavering, then breaks into several voices farther away. Wolves, perhaps, or another canid calling across the dark. The sound travels over the grass and through your chest. It is lonely and social, at the same time a message sent from one body to another across distance. The people around you listen without speaking. One child wakes inside a shelter and begins to stir. An adult reaches in, murmurs softly, and the child settles again. The gesture is almost invisible, but it changes the night. Fear can move through a group, but so can calm. A hand on a shoulder, a low voice, a familiar breathing rhythm. These are protections too. The smell of the fire thickens as someone adds damp wood. Smoke rolls low for a moment, stinging your eyes. You blink and tears blur the flames. The wood hisses, then catches, and the light grows stronger. It reveals the nearest stones the sleeping hides. the tools set carefully beside the shelter entrance. Beyond that, the dark remains. A less commonly noticed detail from ancient sites is that camp layout may have helped manage night safety. Hearth placement, sleeping areas, and activity zones were often arranged in practical ways. Fire at the centre, bodies near warmth tools within reach, refuse away from sleeping places. None of this required written planning. It was common sense shaped by long experience. The ancient version of home security was not a password. It was where you put the fire, where you slept, and who stayed awake. You watch one person take the role of night watcher. They sit just beyond the brightest glow, wrapped in hide face turned outward. Their posture is relaxed but alert. Perhaps others will trade places later. Perhaps sleep comes in lighter layers than you are used to. In a world without electric light, night may offer long hours of rest, but not always one unbroken sleep. People may wake, tend fires, speak quietly, feed infants, watch the stars, then drift back into dreams. You pull your covering tighter. The hide is heavy on your shoulders, slightly smoky, rough at the edges. Beneath you, grass bedding is flattened under your weight. The ground holds the day's cold. Your toes search for warmth. Another sound comes from the distance. A deep cough. Not human. The watcher turns slowly. The camp holds its breath. A moment passes, then another. Nothing moves close to the light. No eyes shine at the edge. No shape appears. The sound does not repeat. After a while, the tension loosens, not all at once, but gradually, like a knot softening. You exhale. The watcher shifts, but does not relax completely. This is the rhythm of the night. Sound attention, waiting release. Again and again. The dark teaches patience as surely as the day teaches movement. You begin to understand why stories would grow beside fires. Not only because people had time after sunset, but because the dark asks to be filled with meaning. A sound beyond the camp becomes a remembered warning. A strange cry becomes part of a tale. A narrow escape becomes instruction. A child learns which noises matter and which belong to the ordinary breathing of the world. Today you might fall asleep to a fan of podcast distant traffic or rain against a window. Here sleep comes with animal calls, shifting branches, embers settling, and the quiet breathing of people close by. The ancient night is not quiet in the modern sense. It is alive, but there is comfort in learning its pattern. The stars wheel slowly overhead. No one names them in writing, but they are known. Their positions shift with season. Their rising and setting mark time in ways no clock yet measures. Above the camp, the sky is immense, but the fire keeps the human circle small and warm. The watcher glances back toward the sleeping shelters. Someone mutters in a dream. A child sighs. A coal collapses inward with a soft whisper of ash. The night sounds continue beyond the fire, but they no longer feel only threatening. They feel like the world speaking in its sleep. Some voices are sharp, some soft, some best respected from a distance. You do not need to understand them all. You only need to listen. And so you sit in the amber glow between warmth and darkness, between fear and comfort, learning what the first long nights taught every human heart. Stay near the light. Listen carefully. Rest when you can. By the time morning returns, the cold has settled deep into the ground. You feel it before you fully wake, pressing through the grass beneath you, lingering in your fingers and face. The fire has shrunk again to a low glow, but someone is already awake, feeding it gently, bringing light back into the camp. The night watcher rests now, wrapped tightly, breathing slow and steady. Others begin to stir one by one as pale light spreads across the land. The sky shifts from deep blue to a soft grey, then to a faint wash of gold along the horizon. Today the group will move again. Not far perhaps, but far enough. You rise with them, shaking bits of grass from your covering. The shelters are taken down with quiet efficiency. Branches are lifted, hides, folded grass scattered back into the earth. Nothing is wasted, but nothing permanent is left behind either. Soon the place begins to look as it did before you arrived, except for faint marks in the soil, and a memory held only by those who were here. This movement is not random wandering. It follows patterns shaped by water animals, seasons, and knowledge passed through generations. In many prehistoric societies, people moved along familiar routes, returning to certain places at certain times of year. These paths were not written down, but they were deeply known, held in memory, and shared through experience. You follow the group as they leave the campsite behind. The air smells clean and sharp. Frost lingers in shaded patches. Your breath forms soft clouds that vanish quickly in the growing light. The land ahead slopes gently downward toward a wide river, its surface catching the morning sky in broken reflections. Water draws people. It always has. Rivers offer drinking water, fish plants, and pathways through the landscape. They connect places, guide movement, and shape where people stop and stay, even if only for a short time. You walk toward it now, feeling the ground change under your feet from dry grass to damp soil. Birds gather near the water's edge, their calls sharp and bright in the morning air. A few lift suddenly as the group approaches, wings beating in quick bursts before settling again farther along the bank. You kneel near the river and watch it move. It does not rush, but it does not stop either. It carries small bits of debris, leaves, twigs, fragments of life from places you cannot see. You dip your hand into it. The cold is immediate, almost shocking, but clean. It wakes you fully. Nearby, someone points to a narrow crossing where stones break the surface. The group moves there, stepping carefully from one to another. The water flows around your ankles when you misstep slightly, soaking the edge of your covering. The cold bites sharply, then fades as you move on. Crossing a river is never casual. You feel the weight of it, the need to move safely, to keep balance, to protect what you carry. A fall here could mean more than discomfort. It could mean losing tools, food, warmth. You step slowly, placing each foot with care, guided by those who know where to land. On the far side, the land rises again, dotted with low shrubs and scattered stones. The group pauses briefly, not to rest, but to look back. The river lies between you and the old campsite, now a quiet boundary. You move forward. As the day unfolds, the path becomes less clear to your eyes, but no less certain to those leading. Subtle signs guide them. The bend of a tree, the pattern of stones, the direction of wind. A distant ridge that looks like any other until you notice the way it slopes just slightly differently. There's a quiet detail that sometimes appears in archaeological studies. Certain landscapes show repeated human use over long periods, even when no permanent structures remain. Layers of tools, ash and debris suggest that people returned again and again, following routes that made sense for survival. These were not roads in the modern sense, but they were paths nonetheless. You begin to feel that sense of direction now, not as a map in your mind, but as a rhythm in your movement. The group knows where it is going, even if you do not. The sun climbs higher, warming the air. Frost melts into dampness. The smell of earth rises richer now, mixed with plant life and the faint scent of animals that have passed through earlier. You notice tracks again, not fresh ones this time, but older impressions softened by time. Someone pauses to study them briefly, then continues. Information is gathered even when it is no longer urgent. Every detail adds to the larger understanding of the land. A question remains among those who study these ancient movements. How far did people travel regularly, and how wide were their territories? Some evidence suggests that certain groups moved across large distances over the course of a year, while others may have stayed within smaller well-known regions. The answer likely varies, shaped by environment, resources, and the needs of each group. You walk on feeling the steady pace settle into your body. There is no rush, no destination that must be reached by a certain hour, only the need to move, to find and know. By midday, the group reaches a new area where the land dips into a sheltered hollow. Trees grow thicker here, their branches forming a loose canopy that filters the sunlight. The air feels softer, less exposed to wind. This may be a place to stop, not forever, but for now. You watch as the group begins to spread out, already reading the land, already deciding where to gather, where to rest, where to build the next temporary shelter. Movement ends, for a time, and the quiet work of living begins again. You stand at the edge of the hollow looking back at the path you have taken. The river is no longer visible. The old camp is gone. Only memory connects you to it now. Head new ground waits, new tasks, new moments. The journey continues not as a straight line, but as a series of returns, adjustments, and quiet decisions. And as you step forward into this new place, you begin to understand that the path itself is never truly lost. It lives in those who walk it. The hollow holds a softer kind of silence, not empty but sheltered. The wind moves more gently here, slipping through leaves instead of sweeping across open ground. You feel the difference almost immediately. The air is warmer by a small but meaningful degree, and the ground beneath your feet is layered with old leaves, giving each step a quiet, cushioned sound. The group settles without discussion, each person drifting into familiar roles. Some move toward the trees, scanning for useful branches. Others kneel near patches of low plants, checking what might be gathered. A few walk farther, tracing the edges of the hollow, learning its shape. You follow one of them toward a slight rise, where the land opens again, but not fully. Beyond the hollow you catch a glimpse of something unexpected. A line of brightness. At first it seems like a trick of the light. Then you realize it is water, not a narrow stream like the one you crossed earlier, but something wider. The air shifts as you approach, carrying a faint saltiness mixed with the smell of wet stone and distant life. The sound reaches you next. A slow, steady rhythm rising and falling. You are near a coastline. It may not be the vast ocean you imagine today, because during the Ice Age sea levels were lower. Large areas of land that now submerged once formed wide coastal plains. These spaces offered rich resources, with fish, shellfish, birds and marine animals providing steady food. Many researchers now consider coastal routes as possible pathways for early human movement, especially in regions where inland travel was difficult. You step closer, feeling the ground change again. Sand replaces soil. It shifts slightly under your weight cooler beneath the surface. Small stones press against your feet. The wind carries a sharper edge here, moving more freely across open water. The sea stretches out before you. It is not calm in the way of a quiet lake. It moves constantly, breathing in long, slow waves that roll toward the shore, break softly, then pull back again. The sound is endless yet soothing, a rhythm older than memory. The group approaches carefully. They do not rush into the water. They observe first, always observe. One person walks along the edge, scanning the ground. Another looks toward the shallows where darker shapes shift beneath the surface. You notice small shells scattered across the sand. Some are broken, others whole. A few still hold the faint smell of the sea. One person crouches and begins to collect them, placing them into a container. These are not decorations, not yet. They are food. Evidence from many prehistoric sites shows that humans made use of coastal resources when they could. Shell middens, which are piles of discarded shells, have been found in various parts of the world, sometimes growing over long periods as people returned again and again to the same shoreline. These remains tell a quiet story of repeated visits of meals gathered from the edge of land and water. You kneel and pick up a shell. It is smooth, cool, slightly damp. Its surface catches the light in subtle patterns. Inside it smells faintly of salt and life. You hand it to someone nearby and they nod, adding it to the growing collection. A little farther along the shore, someone uses a pointed stick to probe the wet sand. After a few moments, they pull up something small and wriggling, food hidden just beneath the surface. It is placed carefully into a container joining the shells. There is a detail here that is easy to overlook. Gathering from the coast requires knowledge just as precise as gathering from forest or grassland. Tides, though not yet measured with charts or clocks, are understood through observation. The timing of water rising and falling determines when certain foods are accessible. Mistiming could mean empty hands, or worse, being caught in shifting water. How early humans used coastal environments remains an area of ongoing research. Some findings suggest that coastal living may have been more common than once believed. while other scholars caution that evidence is limited because many ancient shorelines now lie underwater. The sea has a way of keeping secrets, covering old camps and pathways beneath its shifting surface. You walk along the shore listening to the waves. The sound is steady, almost hypnotic. It blends with the calls of distant birds and the whisper of wind. Your thoughts begin to slow, matching the rhythm of the water. Children move carefully here, watch more closely than in the hollow. The edge between land and sea demands respect. One child reaches toward the water, then pulls back as a wave slides in, touching their toes before retreating. They laugh softly, surprised by the movement. Another child finds a larger shell and holds it up, turning it in the light. The adult nearby nods, then gently takes it, showing how to check inside before adding it to the collection. Lessons continue, always woven into action. You notice something else. A piece of driftwood smoothed by water lies near the shore. Someone picks it up, testing its weight, its balance. It may become part of a tool or fuel for a fire, or simply something useful carried back to camp. Even here, where the land meets the sea, nothing is ignored. The group does not stay long. They gather what they can, then begin to turn back toward the hollow. The coastline remains behind you, stretching endlessly in both directions. It feels like a boundary, but also a path. A place where people could move, guided by the line between land and water. As you walk away, you glance back once more. The waves continue their motion unchanged by your brief presence. The shells you collected are small things, but they carry the taste of the sea, the memory of this place. You return to the shelter of the hollow where the air feels still and warm again. The group begins to prepare for evening, adding the newly gathered food to what they already have. Fire will come soon, and with it another night. But now you carry something different with you. The sound of waves, the smell of salt, and the quiet understanding that long before ships and maps humans were already walking beside the sea, learning its rhythm and taking what it offered. The evening settles gently over the hollow, and the air holds on to the day's warmth just a little longer than the open plains did. You sit near the fire again, watching as the gathered food is prepared. Shells crack open with small, sharp sounds. Roots are placed near the coals. Someone turns a piece of driftwood, slowly testing how it burns. The group is quieter tonight, not from fatigue alone, but from the steady rhythm of a day that has already given enough. There is no need to chase more. What has been gathered will carry them forward. You notice something subtle as the work continues. Some of the seeds collected earlier are not eaten immediately. Instead, they are set aside. A few are placed near the edge of the fire, not close enough to burn, but warm enough to dry. Others are kept in small pouches, protected carefully. At first, it seems like simple storage, a way to preserve food for later. But as you watch more closely, you begin to sense that something else is happening. A pattern, a habit, something repeated often enough to matter. Long before farming began, humans were already interacting with plants in ways that went beyond simple gathering. They returned to the same places, harvested certain species, and sometimes unintentionally influenced how those plants grew and spread. Over many generations, these small actions may have contributed to the gradual process that would eventually lead to agriculture. You turn one of the seeds over in your fingers. It is small, hard, unremarkable at first glance, and yet inside it there is potential, growth, continuation, a future that cannot be seen yet. Nearby, someone scatters a few leftover seeds onto the ground, not carelessly, but without the intention of eating them. Perhaps they will sprout. Perhaps they will be eaten by birds. Perhaps nothing will come of it. But over time, such actions could shape the landscape in quiet ways. There is a long-standing question among those who study early human societies. Did people consciously begin to cultivate plants, or did agriculture emerge gradually from repeated patterns of gathering and managing wild resources? Some evidence suggests a slow transition where human behavior and plant growth became increasingly connected. Other interpretations emphasize more deliberate steps toward cultivation at specific times and places. You look around the camp, trying to imagine that shift. Fields where there are none, seeds planted with intention, people staying in one place not just for a season but for years. It feels distant from where you sit now, and yet the smallest beginnings are already here. A child watches as an adult cracks open a seed pod. The pieces fall into their hands and the child mimics the motion, clumsy but determined. A few seeds spill onto the ground. The adult does not rush to gather them all. Some remain where they fall. You think about how change rarely announces itself. It does not arrive with a clear signal. It grows slowly, almost invisibly through repetition. The fire pops softly, sparks rise and disappear into the dark. The smell of roasting food fills the air richer now with the addition of shellfish. There is a faint sweetness, a trace of salt, something different from the usual sense of meat and roots. The group eats quietly, sharing what has been gathered. You taste one of the seeds after it has been warmed. It is nutty, slightly bitter, but satisfying. You can imagine how over time people might begin to favour certain plants over others, choosing the ones that taste better, grow more reliably, or are easier to process. There is a lesser-known detail that hints at this early relationship between humans and plants. In some prehistoric sites, archaeologists have found grinding stones with traces of plant residues, suggesting that people were processing seeds and grains long before formal agriculture. These tools show wear patterns that indicate repeated use, as if certain plants were becoming regular parts of the diet. You picture someone sitting just like this long ago, grinding seeds into a coarse powder, mixing it with water, perhaps cooking it near the fire. Not yet bread as you know it, but something close. Something that could be shared, stored, depended upon. The idea lingers. Dependence. That is what will change everything. Right now, the group depends on movement, on variety, on flexibility. They follow the land, adapting to what it offers. But if people begin to depend on specific plants grown in specific places, then movement may begin to slow. You look at the hollow around you. It is a good place, sheltered, close to water, near varied resources. You can almost imagine staying, but the group will not stay long. Not yet. The knowledge they carry is built for motion, not stillness. Still the seeds rest in their pouches. The habits continue. The small choices repeat. And somewhere far ahead in time, those choices will gather into something larger. Fields, villages, walls. The end of this long wandering age. But for now the fire burns low and the night wraps around the camp. You lean back slightly, feeling the warmth fade as you move away from the flames. The sky above is clear, the stars steady and bright. The hollow holds its quiet. A few seeds remain on the ground near your feet. You leave them there, not because you are thinking about the future, but because in this moment it simply does not matter. And that is how change begins, not with intention, but with countless small moments that no one notices at the time. The seeds remain near the fire as the night grows quiet, small and ordinary against the dark soil. By morning some have been tucked away, some have been eaten, and some have disappeared into the ground where feet birds reign, and chance will decide their future. No one marks the place, no one calls it a beginning. The group simply wakes, warms itself, gathers its things and moves back into the patient rhythm of the day. You follow as the path leaves the sheltered hollow and climbs toward higher ground. The air is cool but not bitter. Mist lies in low places, pale and thin, drifting between shrubs like smoke without fire. Your feet press into damp earth. The smell of leaves, stone and distant water rises with every step. Today the land feels watched. Not by animals alone, though there are signs of them everywhere. A hoofprint near mud, a bird lifting from the grass, a scatter of small bones beneath a tree. This feeling is different. Human almost, or close to human. You move through a narrow passage between rocks and emerge into a valley where another camp once stood, or perhaps still stands somewhere beyond sight. The people with you slow down. Their voices become softer. Tools are checked. Children are drawn a little closer, not in panic, but in awareness. Because in this ancient world, Homo sapiens are not always the only humans. For a long stretch of prehistory, modern humans shared parts of the world with Neanderthals, a closely related human species that lived across Europe and Western Asia. before disappearing around 40,000 years ago. They made tools, used fire-hunted animals, cared for one another, and adapted to cold environments with remarkable skill. They were not the clumsy brutes imagined in old cartoons, which is fortunate because history already has enough bad illustrations to apologise for. You reach a flat area near the base of a cliff. The ground is scattered with old stone flakes, some weathered, some sharp enough to suggest more recent work. One of your companions crouches and picks up a flake, turning it in the light. The shape is familiar, but not quite the same as those made in your camp. A different hand, a different method, perhaps a different group. The valley holds its breath. A raven calls from above, harsh and amused as ravens often sound when they know something you do not. You continue slowly. In the distance, near a line of dark trees, you see smoke, a thin column rising into the pale sky. The group stops. No one needs to explain what smoke means. Fire means people, or at least beings very much like people. Fire means presence, intention, warmth, food, shelter, danger, possibility. You do not approach directly. Instead, the group waits near the rocks, watching. The smoke bends slightly in the wind. A figure moves near it, too far away for details. Then another. They are stockier than the people around you, perhaps broader in the chest, moving with quiet strength. Neanderthals, maybe, or another group of modern humans. From this distance, certainty is a luxury no one possesses. Ideas about Neanderthal and Homo sapiens encounters are still being refined. Genetic evidence shows that many people living today outside sub-Saharan Africa carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA, which means the two groups interbred at some point. But the nature of their interactions is harder to reconstruct. They may have avoided one another, competed, exchanged knowledge, formed bonds, or done all of these things at different times and places. You remain still hidden partly by stone and scrub. The figures near the smoke move with purpose. One bends over the fire. Another carries something heavy, perhaps wood or meat. A smaller shape lingers close to an adult. The scene is not so different from the camp you have known. Fire, bodies, work, watchfulness, a child staying near warmth. The difference, if there is one, does not announce itself loudly. It is in proportions, movements, tool shapes. Perhaps in language, though you cannot hear them from here. Perhaps in customs no outsider could immediately understand. You feel a quiet shift inside yourself. The ancient world is not a single human story. It is a braided one made of relatives, neighbours, vanished branches, meetings that left no written record. A curious trace from Neanderthal sites is that some individuals survive serious injuries or illness for long periods, suggesting care from others. Archaeologists have found remains showing healed wounds, missing teeth, and conditions that would have made survival difficult without help. This does not make them sentimental angels, of course. It makes them recognizable. Care is practical, but it is also deeply human. The wind moves through the valley, carrying a faint smell of smoke from the distant camp. It mixes with cold stone and dry grass. You wonder if they can smell your group too. One of your companions places a hand lightly on a child's shoulder, steadying them. Another slowly lowers a spear, not pointing it outward but keeping it ready. The gesture is careful, not hostile, not trusting either. Between the two groups lies open ground. No one crosses it. The moment stretches. Then near the distant fire, one of the figures turns. Their head lifts. They look toward the rocks. You feel everyone around you become completely still. For several breaths, nothing happens. No shout, no charge, no greeting. Just two kinds of humans, or perhaps two groups of humans, aware of one another beneath the same pale sky. The figure turns back to the fire. The tension eases. Your group slowly withdraws, moving along the rocks without haste. Not fleeing, simply choosing distance. Today, distance is wisdom. As you walk away, you keep thinking about that smoke. Another fire. Another circle of warmth. Another set of hands making tools, feeding children, reading weather, listening at night. The world before civilization was not empty space waiting for one species to fill it. It was a living landscape of encounters, some close, some distant, some forgotten except in bones and genes. Later, when the group pauses beside a narrow stream, you sit on a cold stone and watch water move around your feet. The sound is soft, steady, unconcerned. Someone drinks. Someone checks the path ahead. Life resumes as it always does after a moment of uncertainty. You look back toward the valley, though the smoke is no longer visible. The Neanderthals, if that is who they were, will go on with their day. Your group will go on with theirs. Perhaps their paths will cross again. Perhaps not. Perhaps somewhere in some future generation, traces of such meetings will remain quietly inside human bodies long after the camp's fires and footsteps have vanished. The stream glints in the afternoon light. You stand and continue walking. Behind you, the valley keeps its secrets. Ahead, the old human road continues shared by more lives than memory can hold. The stream carries you away from the valley, its quiet movement guiding your steps as the land begins to rise again. The air feels thinner here, cooler, touched by a steady wind that moves across the slopes without interruption. You climb slowly with the group, your breath settling into a steady rhythm, your feet finding careful balance among loose stones. The ground beneath you changes as you ascend. Grass gives way to patches of exposed rock. Shrubs grow smaller, clinging close to the earth as if reluctant to face the wind. The sky seems larger here, stretching wide and pale above you, with clouds drifting slowly like distant thoughts. This is higher country. Fewer trees, fewer places to hide, but still people come here. Across parts of Asia, evidence has shown that ancient human relatives adapted to high-altitude environments long before modern technologies made such places comfortable. One particular group, known today only through fragments of bone and genetic traces, lived in regions that would challenge even modern visitors. They are called Denisovans, named after a cave where their remains were first identified. You follow the group along a narrow ridge, the land dropping away on either side. The wind presses gently against your body, not strong enough to push, but constant enough to remind you of its presence. It carries scents from far below, faint traces of water earth, and something colder, sharper. There is something different about this place, not just the height, but the feeling of distance. From the coast, from the valley, from the other camp you passed. The world seems stretched here, each sound, travelling farther, each movement more visible. The group pauses near a cluster of rocks that form a natural shelter from the wind. You step inside and feel the immediate difference. The air is still, warmer in a subtle way, protected. Someone sets down a bundle and begins to unpack it. Few tools, a strip of dried meat, a small pouch. Nothing excessive. Everything carried has a purpose. You sit on a flat stone and look out over the landscape. From here you can see far. Rolling hills, distant water, faint lines where the land shifts and folds into itself. It is a view that offers both beauty and information. Paths, weather patterns, animal movement all can be read from a height like this. A small detail from archaeological research suggests that high places like this were not only used for travel or temporary shelter, but sometimes for observation or strategic advantage. Being able to see across wide areas could help track herds, locate resources, or simply understand the movement of the world around you. You notice something else, a faint scattering of stone flakes near the shelter. Old, weathered, left behind by others who passed this way before. The shapes are not identical to those made by your group. The edges are formed differently, the angles slightly altered. It is subtle but noticeable if you look closely. Another trace of another presence. Denisovans remain one of the more mysterious branches of the human family. Very little of their physical form is known from fossils, but their genetic legacy tells a broader story. Some modern populations, particularly in parts of Asia and Oceania, carry traces of Denisovan DNA, suggesting that these ancient people met and mixed with Homo sapiens at some point in the distant past. What those encounters looked like is still uncertain, peaceful, tense, brief, long-lasting. The evidence does not speak clearly enough to choose one version over another. You run your fingers over one of the old stone flakes. It feels familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. A tool shaped by hands not your own, following a pattern you almost understand. It is a quiet connection, not direct, but real. The wind rises slightly, carrying a thin whistle across the rocks. You pull your covering tighter and watch as one of the group members steps out to scan the horizon. Their posture is relaxed but attentive. Even here in this open space, awareness does not fade. A bird circles above, riding the wind with barely a movement of its wings. It glides effortlessly, its path shaped by currents you cannot see. For a moment you feel the difference between walking and flying, between being bound to the ground and moving freely through the air. Then the bird disappears beyond the ridge. The group does not stay long. This place is useful, but not comfortable for extended rest. The wind alone would make long nights difficult. Still, the brief pause has value, a chance to observe, to orient, to remember. As you prepare to move again, someone adjusts a bundle, tightening the binding with a strip of sinew. Another checks the edge of a tool. Small actions repeated endlessly, keeping everything ready. You take one last look from the ridge. The land stretches in every direction, layered with paths you cannot fully see. Each valley, each stream, each distant rise holds its own story, its own traces of those who have passed through. And somewhere within all of it, different kinds of humans have walked, not separated by clear lines, but overlapping, crossing, sharing. The group begins to descend, moving carefully down the slope. Loose stones shift underfoot. The wind fades slightly as you drop lower, replaced again by the smells of grass and earth. The high place recedes behind you, but the feeling remains. A reminder that the ancient world was not only wide, but shared in ways that are only now being understood. You follow the others down into the valley, your steps steady, your mind quiet. The path continues, as it always has. By the time you descend fully from the higher ground, the air has softened again. The wind no longer presses constantly against you, and the scent of grass returns mixed with damp soil and the faint sweetness of decaying leaves. The land here feels more generous, as though it holds on to warmth a little longer. The group settles near a cluster of low trees beside a narrow stream. It's not a dramatic place, but it has what is needed. Water, shelter from wind, signs of animal movement, enough space to rest. You recognize the pattern now. Not permanent settlement, but repeated comfort. The fire is built again, this time with practiced ease. Stones are arranged, dry wood is gathered, and soon the familiar crackle returns. Smoke rises in a thin line before drifting sideways in the cooling air. You sit near it, letting the warmth reach your hands, feeling the quiet satisfaction of stopping after a long stretch of movement. This is a place for holding, not just bodies, but food. You notice it quickly as the group begins to unpack what they carry. Bundles are opened, pouches untied. Items are laid out carefully, not scattered, but placed in small, intentional groupings. Dried meat from earlier hunts, roots gathered from the hollow, shellfish from the coast, seeds and nuts, some already processed, others still in their natural form. This is not a feast, but it is something close to security. One widely supported idea in prehistoric research is that people often prepared for periods when food would be harder to find, especially in colder climates. Drying, smoking, or otherwise preserving food allowed it to last longer, reducing the risk of sudden scarcity. Storage, even in small amounts, changes the rhythm of survival. You watch as a strip of meat is held over the fire, not to cook it, but to dry it further. The heat is low, the process slow. Someone turns it carefully, checking its texture. Nearby roots are sliced into thinner pieces and placed near the edge of the warmth, where they will lose moisture over time. The smell is different tonight. Less sharp, more steady. Food that is meant to last does not rush. A child sits beside a small pile of nuts, cracking them with a rounded stone. The rhythm is irregular at first, then steadier. Crack. Pause. Crack. The pieces are gathered into a pouch, though a few are eaten along the way. Some habits never change, no matter the age. There is a detail that appears in certain archaeological sites, particularly in colder regions. Remains of stored food, sometimes in pits or protected areas, suggests that people did not always consume everything immediately. Instead, they created small reserves. These may not have lasted long by modern standards, but even a few days of stored food could make a difference. You glance toward the edge of the camp where the ground dips slightly. A shallow depression has been cleared, lined with leaves and covered partially with stones. Inside, a few items are placed carefully, then covered again. It is simple, but effective. Hidden, protected, remembered. The idea of saving for later carries a quiet weight. It means thinking beyond the moment, beyond today's hunger, into tomorrow, into uncertainty. Nearby, two adults speak in low tones while sorting through gathered plants. One points to a small bundle separating it from the rest. The other nods. Perhaps it is not safe. Perhaps it needs more preparation. Knowledge is not just about what to take, but what to avoid. There is still much that remains uncertain in how early humans managed food over longer periods. Some evidence suggests careful planning and storage, while other findings indicate a more immediate pattern of consumption. The truth likely varies depending on environment, season, and group behavior. You sit back slightly, watching the firelight play across the gathered supplies. This is not abundance in the modern sense, but it is enough. Enough to rest, enough to share, enough to feel for a brief moment that the world is not entirely unpredictable. The group eats slowly. No rush, no competition. Food is passed from hand to hand. A piece of dried meat, a handful of nuts, a softened root. The act of sharing is quiet but constant. No one eats alone unless they choose to. You notice how carefully portions are handled. Not measured but understood. Each person takes what they need but not more. The balance is not enforced by rule but by awareness. Everyone knows that taking too much now could mean less later. A softer detail emerges as the evening deepens. Laughter. Not loud, not long, but present. A small joke passes between two individuals. A child imitates an adult's serious expression, earning a few quiet smiles. These moments do not leave marks in the ground or tools for archaeologists to find, but they are part of the human experience just as surely as any artifact. The fire burns steadily. The stored food rests nearby. The shelters, simple and low, hold the warmth of bodies settling in for the night. You feel the rhythm of this place, not the urgency of the hunt, not the constant movement of travel, but a pause, a holding point, a place where effort becomes stability even if only for a short time. You lean closer to the fire, letting its warmth sink into your hands. The night air cools around you, but the center holds. And as you watch the careful handling of food, the quiet sharing, the small acts of preparation, you begin to understand something deeper. Survival is not only about finding, it is also about keeping. And in this simple act of holding food against the uncertainty of tomorrow, you see another step in the long path that will one day lead to something more permanent. But not yet. For now the fire glows, the food is safe, and the night unfolds gently around you. The stored food remains tucked safely near the edge of the camp, covered with leaves and stone, while evening settles deeper into the trees. You sit near the fire, watching the low flames move over familiar faces, tools, hides, baskets, and sleeping places. The camp has the feeling of a pause, not a destination, but a held breath in the long movement of human life. Tonight your attention drifts toward smaller things, not food, not shelter, not the large shapes of animals beyond the dark. Small objects rest near the fire on a flat stone, a few shells, a smooth animal tooth, a piece of bone with a hole worked carefully through one end. A bead, perhaps, or something becoming a bead. These objects are not immediately useful in the way a blade or digging stick is useful. They will not cut meat, scrape hide, or crack nuts, and yet they have been kept. Someone picks up the pierced tooth and turns it between finger and thumb. The firelight catches its worn surface. A cord made from sinew or plant fibre is threaded through it slowly, patiently. The tooth joins several other small items already hanging together. When lifted, they click faintly against one another, a dry, delicate sound. This is ornament. This is identity. This is the ancient human habit of saying, without writing a single word, something about who you are. Personal decoration is known from many prehistoric contexts. Beads made from shells, teeth, bone, ivory, and stone appear in sites tens of thousands of years old. Some were worn as necklaces, bracelets sewn onto clothing, or attached to hair and bags. These small objects suggest that early humans cared about appearance, belonging, memory, and social meaning long before cities or formal ranks appeared. You lean closer as another person sorts shells collected earlier near the coast. Not every shell is chosen. Some are too fragile, some too plain, some have broken in the wrong way. The selected ones are rubbed clean, inspected, and placed together. A sharp stone point is used carefully at the edge of one shell, working slowly to make an opening. It takes time. The hand must be steady. The shell could crack at any moment, which would be annoying in any century. The sound is soft. Scrape, pause, turn, scrape again. The person working does not hurry. Around them, the camp continues its quiet evening life. Someone tends the fire. Someone stretches hide near the smoke. A child watches the shell work with wide, serious eyes, clearly wondering when they will be trusted with the delicate task, and clearly not yet being trusted with it. A less obvious detail about ancient ornaments is that many show signs of wear. Under magnification, researchers can see polish smoothing or tiny damage around holes, where beads rubbed against cord or clothing. This tells us they were not always made and discarded immediately. Some were worn for long periods, moving with bodies through daily life. They clicked while people walked. They warmed against skin. They carried the smell of smoke, sweat, and weather. You imagine one bead travelling through seasons, across rivers, beside fires, through snow, into caves, past coastlines, a small thing carrying a person's presence wherever they went. The question of what these ornaments meant remains beautifully difficult. They may have marked group identity, family connections, age, skill, partnerships, achievements, or beliefs. Some may have been simply beautiful. Those who study them must balance caution with imagination, because meaning does not fossilize as easily as shell. Still, the fact that people spent time making and wearing them tells us they mattered. A woman near the fire lifts a finished string of shells and holds it against a hide garment. The pale shells stand out in the firelight. She adjusts their spacing, then nods. Later they may be sewn along an edge where movement will make them flash softly. The garment itself is practical, made to warm and protect. But now it becomes something more, not less useful, more human. You think of modern clothing for a moment. Buttons, earrings, wedding rings, team colours, favourite sweaters, small charms on bracelets. So many ways people still carry meaning on the body. The forms change. The impulse does not. Nearby, an older man opens a small pouch and removes a red lump of ochre. The colour is deep and earthy, almost glowing in the firelight. He grinds a little against stone-making powder. It stains his fingers. A child leans forward, fascinated. The powder is mixed with fat or water, becoming a paste. With 2 fingers, he marks a line across a piece of hide. Red against brown, bright against dullness. The mark seems simple, but it changes the object completely. Ochre appears again and again in prehistoric sites across wide regions and long spans of time. It may have been used for decoration, hideworking, symbolic acts, burials, or practical purposes. The range of uses is part of what makes it so interesting. A single material could belong to both daily work and deeper meaning. You notice another ornament nearby made from a small bone tube. Its surface has faint incised lanes, not random scratches but repeated marks. They catch shadow, creating a pattern, almost like rhythm made visible. Someone has spent time on this, time that could have gone elsewhere. That choice says something. Outside the circle of firelight, the trees move slightly in the dark. Inside, small objects pass from hand to hand. A shell string, a pierced tooth, a marked hide, a smoothed bone. You begin to see that these things help hold the group together in ways harder to name than food or shelter. They may show belonging. They may carry memory of people, places, animals, or events. They may make the body visible as a social body, not just a hungry one. A child finally receives a broken shell, one that cannot be used for the main string. They hold it proudly anyway, turning it in the light as though given a treasure. For tonight, perhaps it is. The child presses it into the dirt, making a small curved mark, then lifts it and laughs softly. No museum will ever preserve that little game. Still, it belongs to history. The fire burns lower. The ornaments are gathered carefully and put away, not tossed aside. The finished string is wrapped in hide. The ochre is returned to its pouch. The bone piece is placed near other valued items. You feel the tenderness of it. How strange and lovely that in a world where cold, hunger and danger are never far away, people still make time for beauty. Not grand beauty. Not marble halls or golden crowns. Just shells with holes, red pigment on skin, a tooth worn smooth by touch. The night settles around the camp. Someone hums quietly. The shells now wrapped away no longer click in the firelight, but you remember the sound. Small, delicate, human, and as you lie down near the warmth, you understand that civilization did not invent meaning. Long before temples and writing people were already wearing memory shaping identity and carrying beauty with them through the dark. Morning returns with a pale silver light, and the small ornaments from the night before are already tucked away, wrapped carefully in hide and placed among the things worth carrying. The camp stirs around you. Smoke rises. Tools are checked. Food is shared in small portions. The world seems ordinary again, but now you notice how many objects have travelled farther than they first appear to belong. A shell from the coast rests beside a stone from the hills. A red piece of ochre sits in a pouch made from hide taken on the plain. A blade of fine flint catches the light, though no such stone lies anywhere nearby. The group prepares to move, and you begin to understand that people in this age are not isolated dots scattered across an empty map. They move, meet, remember, avoid exchange, and perhaps sometimes gift. The human world before cities is quieter than later history, but not disconnected. Long before roads, markets, coins, or written agreements valued materials travelled across landscapes, archaeologists have found shells, pigments, obsidian, and fine stone far from their natural sources, suggesting long-distance movement exchange or seasonal travel. It does not mean there were shops, of course. No one is opening a prehistoric checkout counter beside the river. But it does mean that objects could move from hand to hand across surprising distances. You walk with a group through low morning mist, carrying the memory of shells clicking softly in firelight. The ground is damp beneath your feet, and grass brushes against your legs, leaving cold beads of water on your skin. Somewhere ahead, another group may be waiting near a known crossing place. Or perhaps the travellers will only pass through a region where others have recently been. By midday, the path leads toward a broad open area near the river. The land flattens here, making it easier to gather, easier to see. Who approaches, easier to leave if the feeling turns wrong. The group slows. Voices lower. Children are drawn closer, not fearfully, but with quiet care. Then you see them. Another small band stands near the water, partly shaded by trees. They are not strangers in the deeper sense, perhaps. Maybe they have been met before in another season. Maybe stories of them are known. Maybe a relative once joined them, or someone from their camp once travelled with yours. In this age, relationships may stretch across distance in ways that leave only faint traces behind. No one rushes forward. The two groups watch one another for a while still, as animals at the edge of a clearing. Then an older person from your group steps ahead, hands visible, posture calm. From the other side, someone does the same. The meeting begins slowly. There is no grand ceremony, just careful approach. Murmured sounds, gestures, long pauses, faces studied in the open light. The river moves beside everyone, whispering over stones as though politely filling the silence. Questions remain about how often prehistoric groups exchanged goods, and how formal those exchanges were. Some specialists imagine broad social networks maintained through visits, partnerships, and shared gathering places. Others caution that distance alone does not prove trade, because a stone found far from its source may have been carried by the same group over many journeys. The evidence invites possibilities more than certainty. You sit at the edge of the meeting place, close enough to watch, far enough to stay out of the way. The air smells of river mud, wet leaves, and smoke from a small fire kindled by the other group. Their fire has a slightly different scent, perhaps from a different wood. It is a tiny difference, but it makes their camp feel distinct. Objects appear. Not many. A piece of glossy dark stone, a bundle of dried plant fibres, a few shells with carefully made holes, a lump of red pigment. The items are placed on a hide between the groups, not tossed casually, not hidden. Hands move slowly. Someone from your group lifts the dark stone and turns it in the light. It is smooth and sharp-edged, good for blades. Another person from the other group touches the shells, studying their holes and polish. No one seems hurried. This is not shopping. This is relationship. A fascinating small clue from some ancient ornaments is that beads found at different sites sometimes share similar styles or techniques, even when the sites are far apart. This may hint at shared ideas, social connections, or people learning from one another across distance. A bead can be more than a bead. It can be a quiet passport, a sign that says we know the same pattern. Food is shared next. A little dried meat, some nuts, a softened root, a few shellfish from the coast still carrying the faint salt smell of the water. Sharing food makes the air warmer somehow. Shoulders loosen. A child from the other group peeks from behind an adult staring at your group with open curiosity. One of the children near you stares back with equal seriousness. Diplomacy apparently begins with suspicious children. Then one child smiles. The other looks away, then smiles too. It is not much, but it changes the mood. The meeting stretches into afternoon. People sit in mixed clusters now, though still mostly near their own companions. Tools are compared. A stone point is passed from hand to hand. Someone demonstrates a binding method, wrapping fibre around a shaft, in a pattern slightly different from the one you know. Another person watches closely, then tries the motion. Knowledge travels this way too. Not just objects. A better knot. A sharper edge. A song pattern. A story of where animals crossed last season. A warning about a flooded valley. A memory of a place where good stone can be found. You hear voices rise and fall, not all understandable, perhaps not even fully shared between the groups. But meaning still moves through pointing, showing imitation laughter, and the patient repetition of sounds. Language, gesture, and objects work together like strands in cord. As the sun begins to lower, a final exchange takes place. The glossy stone remains with your group. In return, several shells and a strip of prepared hide are given. The moment is quiet, but the objects are handled with care. They will travel on. Perhaps the stone will become a blade. Perhaps the shells will be worn by someone who has never seen the sea. That thought stays with you. Someone far inland wearing the coast. Someone near the coast carrying stone from a mountain they have never climbed. Human worlds overlapping through small things. Eventually the groups separate, not abruptly. Slowly, with pauses, glances, final gestures. The other group turns along the river, their figures growing smaller between the trees. Your group gathers its bundles and prepares to move in another direction. The meeting place becomes quiet again. Only the river remains, washing around stones, smoothing everything with time. You walk away carrying more than before, not much in weight, but much in meaning. A piece of dark stone now rests in a bundle near the front of the group. Its surface catches the evening light. It has crossed from one set of hands to another, and with it came trust, caution, memory, and possibility. Long before markets, people knew the value of connection. Long before written maps, objects found their way across the land. And long before civilization raised walls and roads, human beings were already building invisible paths between one another. A piece of dark stone travels with the group through the evening, wrapped in hide, and carried with the same care as food or fire. It is not heavy, but it has weight in another way. It came from other hands. It carries the memory of another camp beside the river, another circle of faces, another set of voices fading into the trees. As the day cools, the group finds a resting place beneath a stand of trees where the ground is dry and slightly raised. The stream nearby moves slowly, its sound lower than the river's more private. The air smells of bark, smoke, and crushed leaves underfoot. A few birds call from the branches, then settle into silence as the light fades. Tonight someone is hurt. Not badly, not in a dramatic way, but enough to change the rhythm of the camp. A young adult sits near the fire with one leg stretched out jaw-tight, trying to look calm in that ancient and very familiar manner of people who would like everyone to know they are absolutely fine while clearly not being absolutely fine. The injury may have happened during the walk, perhaps, on loose stones near the riverbank. The ankle is swollen, the skin is scraped. No one treats it as a catastrophe, but no one ignores it either. Care begins quietly. One person brings cool water. Another examines the swelling with careful hands. A child tries to lean in too close and is gently moved back because curiosity, while admirable, does not need to breathe directly on the patient. In the deep past, there were no hospitals, no pharmacies, no written medical books, and no cheerful little bottle promising relief in 20 minutes. Yet the absence of modern medicine did not mean the absence of care. Archaeological evidence from both Homo sapiens and Neanderthal remains shows that some individuals survived injuries, illness, or disabilities long enough to suggest support from others. Human survival has always included helping the vulnerable. The injured person's foot is lifted onto folded hide. Someone cleans the scrape using water and perhaps soft plant fibers. The movement is slow and deliberate. Dirt is wiped away. A strip of hide is tightened around the ankle for support, not too hard, just enough to hold it steady. The injured person exhales, eyes closing briefly. You sit nearby and watch the firelight move over the scene. There is tenderness here, but also practicality. A person who cannot walk well affects the movement of the whole group. Caring for them is emotional, social, and sensible all at once. These categories, so neatly separated in modern language, blend together in a camp like this. An older woman opens a small pouch and removes dried leaves. She smells them first, then crumbles them into warm water held in a shallow container of bark or hide. You cannot know exactly what plant this is or what effect it is meant to have. It may soothe, it may clean, it may simply be part of a learned routine. But the act itself shows knowledge gathered from long observation. Ancient healing practices are difficult to reconstruct because plants' poultices and spoken knowledge rarely survive. Still traces of medicinal plant use have been suggested at some prehistoric sites, and studies of dental calculus have sometimes revealed plant materials in ancient mouths. The evidence is delicate and interpretation requires caution, but it hints that early people knew far more about useful plants than stone tools alone can tell us. The warm liquid is applied gently to the scrape. The injured person winces, then laughs under their breath, embarrassed perhaps, or trying to soften the concern around them. Someone nearby makes a dry comment and a few quiet smiles pass through the group. Even pain, when shared, becomes less lonely. A lesser-known glimpse into ancient care comes from the famous Shanidar Cave Neanderthal remains, where some individuals showed signs of severe injuries and long-term survival. The exact interpretations have changed over time, and not every older claim is accepted as once presented, but the remains continue to raise important questions about compassion, support, and social bonds among ancient humans. The fire pops softly. Smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of damp wood. The injured ankle is wrapped more securely now. The person is given food without needing to stand. A child brings a bundle of grass bedding, very serious about the responsibility, then drops half of it 2 steps too early. No one scolds. The bundle is gathered again and placed properly. You feel the camp adjusting around this small injury. Tomorrow the group may move more slowly, or stay longer. Tasks may shift. Someone else may carry what the injured person carried. This is not announced. It is simply understood. You look at the faces around the fire and see no grand display of sacrifice, just ordinary cooperation. That may be the most moving part. Care is not always dramatic. Often it is a bowl placed within reach, a covering tucked closer, a pace slowed without complaint. Outside the firelight the night gathers. The trees creak softly. A breeze moves through branches, bringing the smell of cold water and leaf mould. The injured person leans back, finally allowing tiredness to show. Their face loosens, their breathing slows. Someone begins to hum. The sound is low, almost hidden under the crackle of the fire. It may be a comfort, it may be habit. It may be for the child nearby, or for the injured person, or for no one in particular. The melody rises and falls with no clear beginning or end. You think about healing in a world like this. It is not only plants and bindings, it is warmth, rest, food shared, protection through the night. The decision not to leave someone behind simply because they slow the group. That decision, repeated over generations, shapes what humanity is. There are open questions about how widespread and organised such care was among early human groups. Some researchers emphasise strong evidence for social support, while others warn that survival after injury can sometimes occur without long-term dependence. The careful answer is that ancient care varied as all human care varies, but here beside this fire variation feels less important than the simple sight of hands helping. The injured person is moved closer to the shelter entrance, not inside yet, but near enough to warmth. A folded hide is placed under the leg. Another covering is draped over their shoulders. Their eyes open, briefly reflecting the fire. For a moment you remember the mammoths moving across the horizon, the cave hands on stone, the children learning with ochre, the shells traded by the river. All of it feels connected now. Tools, art, exchange, food shelter care. None alone defines humanity. Together they form the quiet fabric of it. The night deepens. The camp grows still. The injured person sleeps. The group remains around them, breathing in the smoke-scented dark held by fire and by one another. And you understand that before cities, before temples, before written laws telling people what they owed each other, there was already this. A hand cleaning a wound. A pace slowed for someone in pain. A place kept warm beside the fire. The night passes gently, and by morning the injured person wakes with a quiet stiffness rather than sharp pain. The swelling remains, but the tightness of the binding and the rest have helped. You notice how the group watches without making a display of it. A glance. A small question spoken softly. A shift in plans that no one announces, yet everyone follows. The camp lingers longer than usual. No one rushes to take down the shelters. The fire is fed slowly, deliberately, as though time itself has softened. You sit near its warmth and look upward, because something about this slower morning draws your attention to the sky. It is clear, deep blue, with only a few faint streaks of cloud stretched thin across it. The sun rises steadily, but it is not yet high. The light feels gentle, almost hesitant, brushing the tops of trees and touching the ground in long angled lines. One of the older members of the group stands slightly apart, looking upward. Not casually, with purpose. You follow their gaze. The sky in this world is not just background. It is information. It is time. It is memory written in light and movement. Before clocks, calendars, or written records, people relied on the sky to understand the passing of days and seasons. The position of the sun, the phases of the moon, the appearance of certain stars all provided clues about when to move, when to gather, when to prepare for colder weather or changing resources. You notice the sun's position relative to the horizon. It climbs at a certain angle, not directly overhead, not low either. The shadows it casts stretch in a particular direction. These details, subtle to you, are meaningful to those who have watched them over many seasons. Nearby, a child points upward, tracing something in the air with a finger. The adult beside them nods, then gently adjusts the direction of the gesture, guiding the child's attention. No words are needed. The lesson passes from one mind to another, through shared looking. The moon, though not visible now, has its own rhythm. It grows, fades, disappears, returns. Its cycle repeats with a steady reliability that can be counted, remembered, anticipated. Even without written numbers, patterns can be held in the mind marked by memory and repetition. There are hints from ancient sites that early humans may have paid close attention to these cycles. Some engraved objects and bone markings have been interpreted as possible records of lunar phases or timekeeping attempts, though interpretations remain cautious. The markings could represent many things, and certainty is difficult. Still, the idea lingers that people were not only observing the sky, but trying to make sense of its patterns. You sit quietly, letting your eyes adjust to the brightness. The sky feels vast, but also intimate in a way. It is always present, always changing, always offering clues to those who know how to read it. A bird crosses overhead its wings, cutting clean lines through the air. It disappears into the distance, leaving only the memory of its movement. The group begins to stir again, but more slowly than before. The injured person tests their weight carefully, placing one foot down, then the other. There is a slight hesitation, then a nod. It will be possible to walk today, though not quickly. Plans shift again. The path ahead will be shorter, the pace gentler. You watch as someone adjusts a bundle, redistributing weight so that the injured person carries less. Another takes on an extra item without comment. These small changes ripple through the group, each person adapting slightly, like water flowing around a stone. You look back at the sky once more. The sun has climbed higher now. The shadows shorten. The light grows stronger, warming the ground, drying the dew from grass and leaves. Time is passing, not measured in minutes or hours, but in the movement of light. There is a quiet question that has occupied those who study ancient human behaviour. How much did early people consciously track time, and how much did they simply live within its flow? Some suggest that detailed awareness of seasonal cycles was essential for survival. Others argue that while patterns were known, the concept of measuring time in precise units may have come much later. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, shaped by need and environment. You stand and stretch, feeling the warmth of the sun reach your back. The air smells cleaner now, less heavy with night. The fire burns lower as the group prepares to move again. Before leaving, one person looks up once more, scanning the sky with a practiced eye. Not for beauty, though it is beautiful, but for meaning. Cloud patterns, wind direction, light quality, all small signs that together form a larger understanding. You begin to see how the sky acts as a kind of map, not of places but of time and change. It tells when to expect cold, when to look for certain animals, when plants may begin to grow or fade. The group begins to walk, moving slowly at first to match the injured person's pace. You follow your steps, falling into rhythm with theirs. Above you the sky continues its quiet movement. The sun rises, the light shifts, and somewhere unseen in the brightness of day the moon waits to return. You carry the awareness of it with you, not as a precise calculation, but as a feeling. That time, like the path beneath your feet, moves steadily forward, guided by patterns that have always been there, waiting to be noticed. The day moves forward at a slower pace, shaped now by the careful steps of the injured traveller. No one complains. The rhythm simply adjusts as it has many times before, in ways that leave no record except in the quiet coordination of bodies moving together. You follow along a gentle slope where the ground softens underfoot. The air feels different again, warmer, slightly damp. The scent of thawing earth rises around you, rich and deep, carrying hints of water roots and something new. Something changing. The land itself seems to be shifting. Patches of old frost no longer hold through the day. Streams run a little fuller, their edges less tightly bound by ice. Plants that once lay dormant begin to show faint signs of growth. Tiny green shoots push through the soil, fragile but persistent. You kneel near one, brushing aside a thin layer of leaf litter. It bends slightly under your touch, then springs back. Alive, this is a turning point in the great long age you're walking through. The Ice Age is not a single frozen moment, but a series of changes, advances and retreats of ice-cold periods, followed by warmer intervals. Over thousands of years, climates shift, sometimes slowly, sometimes more abruptly, altering landscapes, animal patterns and human lives. By the time the last Ice Age began to loosen its hold, Vast glaciers started to retreat, reshaping entire regions. Rivers changed course, new lakes formed, forests expanded into areas that had once been open tundra. These transformations did not happen overnight, but they were real, and they demanded adaptation. You stand and look across the land. What once may have been open and stark is becoming softer, more varied. The world feels less harsh, though not gentle, just different. The group notices it too. Their movements reflect it. They pause near new growth. They test unfamiliar plants with caution. They watch the behaviour of animals that may shift their routes as the land changes. Knowledge must be updated, adjusted, refined. You walk beside a small stream that has grown wider than the one you remember from earlier days. Its banks are muddier, its flow more energetic. Small fish flicker beneath the surface, quick flashes of movement that disappear almost as soon as you notice them. One of the group crouches watching carefully. Fishing is not always a primary focus, but in changing environments, new opportunities appear. Spears may be used, hands may be quick enough, or perhaps this is simply observation gathering information for another time. A subtle but important detail from archaeological research shows that as climates warmed at the end of the Ice Age, human diets and tools began to diversify. In some regions, people relied less on large game and more on a broader range of resources, including fish, small animals, and plant foods. This shift is sometimes called a broad-spectrum adaptation, though the term itself is less important than the idea behind it. Flexibility. You see it now, not as a theory, but as a way of living. The group does not cling to one method. They adjust. They observe. They take what the land offers at any given time. You pass through an area where young trees are beginning to take hold. Their trunks are thin, their leaves small, but they stand where once there may have been only open ground. The air here smells fresher, touched by new growth. Birdsong becomes more frequent. Insects begin to appear, moving through the air in quick darting patterns. A child swats at one missing completely, then tries again with equal lack of success. The insect, unimpressed, continues its day. You smile slightly at the scene. Even in a world of survival, small frustrations remain universal. The group stops near a patch of ground where several plants are growing in clusters. One person kneels and begins to examine them, touching leaves, breaking a small piece, smelling it. Another watches closely, ready to learn or correct. New growth does not mean safe growth. Some plants nourish, others harm. Knowing the difference is essential. There is still uncertainty among researchers about how quickly and evenly these environmental changes affected different regions. Some areas warmed earlier, others remained cold longer. Human responses varied accordingly, shaped by local conditions and available resources. You feel that variation in the land itself. Nothing changes all at once. Everything shifts in layers. The injured person moves carefully beside you, their steps steady but measured. They pause occasionally, adjusting their weight, then continue. The group remains patient, their pace matched to the slowest among them. Ahead, the land opens into a broad meadow. Grass moves in long waves under the wind. Small flowers dot the ground, faint bursts of colour against green. The air carries a different energy here, lighter, almost hopeful. You step into the meadow and feel the softness under your feet. The world is changing, not dramatically, not all at once, but undeniably. You imagine how this might feel over generations. A place that was once cold becoming more welcoming. New plants appearing, animals shifting their patterns, paths changing, opportunities emerging, and with them new challenges. The group moves through the meadow, their figures small against the wide landscape. The sun hangs higher now, warming your back. The sky stretches clear above, uninterrupted. You take a slow breath. The air feels full, alive in a way that is different from the cold, sharp clarity of earlier days. You begin to understand that this is not the end of the old world, but the beginning of something else. A transition, a gradual unfolding, the kind of change that reshapes everything but does so quietly enough that those living within it may not fully notice. You walk on the grass, brushing your legs, the scent of new growth surrounding you. Behind you, the colder world fades. Ahead, something unfamiliar waits. Not yet civilization, Not yet villages or fields, but the first soft signs that the long human story is turning toward a new chapter. The meadow stretches wide beneath the afternoon light, and as you walk through it, you begin to notice something else moving alongside the group. At first it is only a shape at the edge of your awareness. Low, quick, then gone. You glance to the side, scanning the grass. Nothing stands still long enough to be clearly seen. Only a faint ripple where something passed. The others have noticed it too. Their posture changes slightly, not tense but aware in a different way than before. This is not the heavy presence of mammoths, not the distant smoke of another camp. This is something closer, something curious. As the group slows near a cluster of shrubs, the shape appears again. A small animal, lean, watchful. Its fur blends into the grass, but its eyes catch the light for a moment before it slips back into shadow. It keeps its distance, never approaching too closely, never fully retreating either. You recognize it, or at least something like it. A wild canid, perhaps a wolf, perhaps something not yet quite what wolves will become. You remain still watching. The animal circles slowly, its movement quiet, deliberate. It is not hunting, not directly. It seems more interested in observation, in scent, in the possibility of something left behind. The relationship between humans and wolves is one of the most significant developments in the long human story. At some point, likely toward the end of the Ice Age, certain wolves began to associate more closely with human groups. The exact path of this relationship remains uncertain, but over time it led to the domestication of dogs. You look again at the animal. It does not rush forward. It does not bare its teeth. It watches. The group continues its work, though, with subtle adjustments. Food scraps are handled carefully. Movements are deliberate, no sudden gestures, no invitation, no rejection. Just coexistence. You sit near the edge of the camp as the fire is lit once more. The smoke rises, carrying familiar scents into the air. The animal lingers at a distance, drawn perhaps by the smell of food, by curiosity, by something instinctive that neither you nor it fully understands. There is a small detail that appears in some archaeological findings. Early dog remains show signs of living close to humans, sometimes even being buried with care. These findings suggest that the bond between humans and dogs once formed became meaningful very quickly. But the beginning of that bond likely looked much more uncertain than the relationships we know today. You imagine the first moments. Not trust, not companionship, but tolerance. A wolf that does not flee immediately. A human that does not chase it away. A shared space at the edge of survival. The animal steps closer now, just within the outer edge of firelight. Its body is tense, ready to retreat at any moment. Its nose lifts, testing the air. You can see the subtle movement of its chest as it breathes. No one moves toward it. No one throws food. The distance remains, and yet something has shifted. The fire crackles softly. Sparks rise and vanish. The animal flinches at the sound, then steadies. Its ears flick, catching every movement, every voice, every breath. You feel a quiet awareness settle over the camp. This is not a threat. Not exactly. But it is not nothing either. It is a possibility. There are many ideas about how wolves and humans first formed a connection. Some suggest that wolves were drawn to human camps by food waste, gradually becoming less fearful over time. Others propose that humans may have taken in young animals, raising them within the group. The truth is likely complex, involving many small interactions repeated over generations. You watch as the animal lowers itself slightly, resting on its haunches. It does not lie down fully. It remains alert but less rigid than before. A child notices it and leans forward, eyes wide. An adult gently places a hand on the child's shoulder, holding them back. The message is clear. Observe. Do not approach. Not yet. The animal's gaze moves across the group, pausing briefly on different figures. It studies the fire, the movement of hands, the shapes of bodies. Perhaps it sees patterns. Perhaps it senses opportunity. Perhaps it feels something else. You cannot know. The night deepens slowly. The sky darkens, stars beginning to appear one by one. The fire becomes the center once again, its warmth drawing the group closer. The animal remains at the edge, neither part of the circle nor entirely separate from it. Time passes. The distance holds, but it feels different now. Less like a boundary, more like a bridge not yet crossed. You lean back slightly, watching the quiet exchange of presence between human and animal. No words, no gestures, just shared space under the same sky. And in that stillness you sense the beginning of something that will one day change both worlds. Not through force, not through sudden decision, but through patience, through repetition, through small moments like this where fear softens just enough to allow curiosity to remain. The animal shifts, then stands, taking a few slow steps backward. It does not run. It simply fades into the darkness beyond the firelight, its form dissolving into shadow. You watch until it is gone. The camp remains. The fire burns. The people settle into the night. But something has changed. A connection has brushed against the edge of possibility. And though it may take generations to fully form, you have seen its earliest shape. A quiet meeting. A shared space. A world where human and animal begin slowly to walk a little closer together. By morning the animal is gone. Only faint impressions in the grass remain. And even those begin to soften as the sun rises and the ground warms. You step outside the shelter and look toward the place where it had lingered, half expecting to see it again. But the land offers no clear answer. Whatever curiosity brought it near has moved on, just as the group will soon move on as well. The camp stirs gently. Smoke curls upward. Someone feeds the fire. Someone stretches stiff from sleep. The injured traveller tests their foot again, placing weight carefully, then shifting, then nodding once more. Still tender, but stronger than before. You follow the group as they move towards a nearby lake, its surface still and glass-like in the morning light. Mist hangs low above it, thin and drifting, blurring the boundary between water and air. The ground near the shore is soft, marked with tracks from birds, small animals and perhaps others who passed in the night. Water gathers life. You see it immediately. Birds skim across the surface, their wings touching the water in quick, delicate strokes. Insects hover just above, forming small, shifting clouds. Beneath the surface, faint movements suggest fish moving through the shallows. The group approaches slowly. This place is different from the river or the sea. Quieter, contained, predictable in a way that flowing water is not. In many prehistoric landscapes, lakes and wetlands provided reliable sources of food and materials. Fish, waterfowl, reeds and aquatic plants could all be gathered here, often with less effort than hunting large animals. These environments encouraged repeated visits, sometimes turning into favoured seasonal camps. You kneel at the edge of the lake and dip your fingers into the water. It is cooler than the air, but not as sharp as the mountain streams. The surface ripples outward, breaking the reflection of the sky into soft fragments. Nearby, someone cuts reeds with a stone blade. The stems are long and flexible, useful for weaving, binding or building. They're gathered in bundles tied loosely and set aside. Another person wades carefully into the shallows, moving slowly to avoid disturbing the water too much. A quick motion, a splash, then stillness again. The attempt may have been to catch a fish or simply to test the depth and movement. Either way, the information is gathered, stored, remembered. There is an interesting detail found in some ancient lakeside sites. Archaeologists have discovered preserved plant remains, fish bones, and even footprints in muddy sediments, offering glimpses into daily activities that rarely survive elsewhere. These wet environments can hold traces that dry land cannot, capturing moments that would otherwise vanish completely. You imagine those footprints forming beneath your own feet, soft impressions in wet earth, temporary yet sometimes preserved by chance for thousands of years. A child runs along the edge of the water, then stops abruptly, watching a group of birds lift suddenly into the air. Their wings beat in unison, creating a rush of sound that fades quickly as they circle and settle again farther away. The child laughs, the sound light and brief. The lake reflects the sky more clearly now as the mist lifts. Clouds drift across its surface, mirrored perfectly until a ripple disturbs them. You watch the reflection break and reform, a quiet reminder of how easily images shift. The group begins to gather food. Small fish are caught with quick hands or simple tools. Water plants are pulled from the shallows, their roots dripping with mud. A few birds are approached carefully, though most remain just out of reach. The work is steady, not frantic. Each success adds to what is already held. There is still uncertainty about how heavily different groups relied on aquatic resources. In some regions, evidence suggests significant use of fish and water-based foods, while in others such resources appear less central. The variation reflects the diversity of environments and the flexibility of human behavior. You sit back on a dry patch of ground, watching the activity unfold. The injured traveller remains near the edge, contributing in smaller ways, sorting, preparing, observing. Their role has shifted, but it has not disappeared. No one is left without purpose. The sun climbs higher, warming the air and drying the ground. The smell of wet earth fades slightly, replaced by the scent of sun-warmed grass and water plants laid out to dry. You notice how the group organises the gathered materials. Fish are placed separately from plants. Reeds are bundled together. Tools are kept within easy reach. There is no spoken plan, but there is order. A subtle rhythm guides these actions, built from repetition and shared understanding. As midday approaches, the group settles near the lake for a brief rest. The water continues its quiet stillness, broken only by occasional movement. The sky above is clear, the light steady and bright. You lie back on the ground, feeling the warmth of the sun against your face. The sounds around you soften. Water, wind, distant bird calls, the gentle movement of people nearby. It is a calm moment, not dramatic, not urgent, just a pause in the long flow of time. You think about how places like this might draw people back again and again, not because they are permanent homes, but because they offer something reliable, something known, a place where food can be found, where water is close, where the land feels familiar. These places become part of a mental map carried not on paper but in memory. The group will leave this lake soon, but they will remember it, and perhaps in another season they will return. You close your eyes briefly, letting the warmth settle into your body. The journey continues, always, but for now there is water light and a moment of rest beside a quiet lake that reflects the sky, as it has for countless generations. The lake remains behind you by the time the light begins to soften again. Its still surface, the reeds, the quiet movements of birds and fish all fade into memory as the group follows a familiar path along a gentle rise in the land. The ground here feels firmer, less damp, marked by subtle traces of repeated passage. You notice it more clearly now. Not a road, not even a defined trail in the way you might expect, but a pattern, grass-worn slightly flatter in places, stones turned in a similar direction, small clearings where fires may have once burned. The signs are faint, easy to miss if you're not looking, but they are there. This is a place people return to. Not once, not by accident, again and again. You follow as the group reaches a cluster of trees arranged in a loose circle. The ground inside is relatively clear, with fewer stones, fewer obstacles. It feels prepared, though no one is preparing it now. A memory held in the land. Archaeological research has identified sites that show repeated human use over long periods, even without permanent buildings. Layers of ash, scattered tools and patterns of debris suggest that certain locations were favoured again and again. These were not villages in the later sense, but they were not random camps either. They were places of return. You step into the clearing and feel the difference immediately. The ground is smoother, the space more open. It invites rest. The group spreads out naturally as though guided by something familiar. One person moves toward a spot near the edge and begins clearing debris even though the area is already relatively clean. Another places a bundle down near a particular tree, as if that tree has held importance before. You sit near the centre and run your hand over the ground. It is dry, warm, softened by time and repeated use. There is a quiet comfort here, not the comfort of walls or roofs, but the comfort of recognition. A place known, a place remembered. You notice faint marks near the base of one tree, scratches perhaps from tools or from repeated contact. They are not decorative, not arranged into any clear pattern, but they are not entirely random either. Someone has touched this place many times. A subtle detail from prehistoric sites is that repeated use can leave traces that are difficult to interpret but clearly intentional. Slight depressions in the ground, consistent placement of hearths, and the positioning of tools all suggest that people organise their spaces even without permanent structures. You imagine earlier visits. The same clearing. Different people. Different seasons. Fires lit in similar places. Voices rising and fading. Children playing in the same open space. Then leaving. Then returning again. The group begins to prepare the area for the evening. The fire is built in a spot that feels almost chosen by instinct. Stones are arranged in a familiar circle. Wood is gathered from nearby, not too far, not too close. Everything falls into place, not by plan, but by memory. There is an interesting idea that appears in some interpretations of early human behaviour. Certain locations may have held social or symbolic importance beyond their practical value. They may have been meeting places, seasonal gathering points, or sites tied to shared memory. The evidence is not always clear, but the repeated use of specific areas suggests that some places mattered more than others. You look around the clearing again. It feels like more than just a convenient spot. It feels like a point of connection. The injured traveller settles near the fire, their movements easier now, though still careful. They stretch their leg out, testing it gently. The group moves around them without disruption, adjusting naturally to their presence. Nearby, a child begins to draw in the dirt with a stick. Simple lines, curves, shapes that mean something to them even if they are not meant to last. The lines will disappear by morning, smoothed by movement, wind, or the simple passing of time. But the act itself feels familiar, like an echo of something deeper. You think of the cave walls, the handprints, the markings in the soil. Humans leaving traces even when those traces are temporary. The fire catches its light spreading outward as the sun lowers. Shadows lengthen across the clearing, stretching between trees, shifting slowly as the light changes. You sit back and watch. There is no urgency here. No need to move quickly. This place allows for stillness. The group eats, rests, repairs tools, tends to small tasks that fill the space between larger efforts. The rhythm is gentle, almost meditative. You notice how people sit in familiar positions, how objects are placed in consistent spots, how movement flows around the fire in a pattern that feels practiced. This is not permanence, but it is not randomness either. It is something in between, a memory that shapes behaviour, a place that gathers meaning through repetition. As the evening deepens, the sky above the clearing darkens to a soft blue. The first stars appear faint at first, then brighter. As the light fades completely, you lie back on the ground looking up through the branches. The same stars, the same patterns, seen from this place many times before. You begin to understand that even without buildings, without walls or fixed structures, humans have always created places of belonging. Not through permanence, but through return, through memory, through the simple act of coming back. The fire burns steadily beside you. The clearing holds its quiet, and somewhere in the layers of time this place remembers every footstep, every voice, every night spent beneath the open sky. The clearing holds you gently through the night, and when morning comes it feels less like waking somewhere new and more like returning to something already known. The ground is familiar beneath your body. The trees stand where you remember them. Even the fire, reduced to soft ash and faint warmth, feels like a continuation rather than a beginning. But something is different today. Not in the air, not in the light, but in the intention of movement. The group does not rush to leave. They linger. You notice it in small ways. Tools are not packed immediately. The fire is rebuilt with more care than usual. Food is prepared in slightly larger portions. A few people move beyond the clearing, then return as though checking something unseen. You follow one of them along a narrow path that leads toward a rise in the land. The trees thin and the ground becomes rockier. As you step forward, the landscape opens into something unexpected. Stone, not scattered. Not natural, placed. Large upright stones stand in a loose arrangement, weathered by time but clearly positioned with intention. Some lean slightly, others stand firm. The space between them feels deliberate, as though shaped by hands that understood more than simple shelter. You step closer, your breath slowing. This is not a camp, not a shelter, not a place of immediate survival. It is something else. Across different parts of the ancient world, there are sites where early humans created structures or arrangements that do not serve obvious practical purposes. One well-known example is Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, where large stone pillars were erected long before settled farming communities became widespread. These kinds of places challenge the idea that complex social or symbolic activity only came after agriculture. You walk between the stones, your hand brushing their rough surfaces. They are cold, solid, unmoving. The texture is uneven, shaped by both human effort and long exposure to the elements. You notice markings, faint, worn, lines carved into the stone, not deep but intentional. They catch the light differently than the natural surface. You cannot fully understand them, but you feel their presence. Meaning exists here, even if it is not clear. The group approaches slowly with a different kind of awareness than when entering a hunting ground or gathering site. Movements are quieter, voices lower. There is no fear, but there is respect. One person places a small object near the base of a stone, a bead. Another adds a fragment of bone, not discarded, placed. You realize that this is not about using the land. It is about marking it, about returning not just for food or shelter, but for something harder to define. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about the purpose of such early structures. Some suggest they were places for gathering for ritual, for shared memory. Others caution that without written records, interpretation remains uncertain. The stones stand, but their meaning is not fixed. You sit near one of the pillars, feeling its presence beside you. It does not move. It does not change, unlike everything else in this world. Fire fades, footprints disappear, plants grow and die, but this stone remains. A lesser-known detail about early monumental sites is that they often required coordinated effort to build. Moving large stones, placing them upright, arranging them in meaningful ways, would have taken time, planning and cooperation. This suggests that even before permanent settlements groups were capable of organizing around shared goals. You imagine the process. People gathering, lifting, carrying, placing, working together not for immediate survival but for something that lasts. The thought lingers because it feels like a shift, a step beyond the daily rhythm of finding food and making shelter, a step toward creating something that outlives the moment. You look around the space again. The arrangement of stones creates a kind of enclosure not fully closed but defined. It shapes movement. It guides where you stand, where you walk, where you look. It creates a place, not just a location, a place with intention. The group remains for a time, moving quietly among the stones. Some sit, some stand, some simply observe. No one explains what this place means. No one needs to. The meaning is felt, shared, even if it is not spoken. You think about the path you have followed, from firelight in open camps, to shelters built from hide and bone, to caves filled with painted animals, to traded objects and shared knowledge. And now to this, stone set into the earth, something fixed, something meant to remain. The sun climbs higher, casting shadows between the pillars. Light and shadow move across the ground, shifting slowly, marking the passage of time in a way that feels different here, more deliberate, more noticed. You stand and walk once more between the stones, your fingers brushing their surfaces as you pass. The marks carved into them feel distant yet close. Human, always human. The group begins to move back toward the clearing, leaving the stones behind. No one takes anything from this place. Nothing is disturbed. The objects placed remain where they are. You follow, glancing back one last time. The stones stand quietly against the sky, unmoving, enduring, a sign that even in this long age before civilization, humans were already shaping the world not just for survival, but for memory. You return to the clearing where the fire still burns and the familiar rhythm of life continues. But something has changed. The idea of permanence has entered the story, and it will not leave. The stones remain behind you, standing quietly against the sky, but their stillness follows as the group returns to the clearing. You feel it in the way the day seems to hold two worlds at once. One world is familiar, made of fire, food, tools, children's shelter, and the steady need to move with the land. The other is newer, or perhaps only newly noticed, made of places that hold meaning even when no one is sleeping there. The group begins preparing to leave. Not immediately, not with urgency, but the signs are there. Bundles are checked. Hides are folded. The fire is allowed to burn lower rather than being fed for a long stay. The clearing, which felt almost like home for a short while, begins to loosen its hold. You stand at its edge looking across the trees and low hills beyond. Somewhere out there are rivers, lakes, coastlines, herds, roots, berries, stone sources, meeting places, and the remembered paths that tie them together. For generations, this kind of movement has carried human life forward. But now, in some parts of the world, movement is beginning to change. Not vanish, not yet, but slow. As climates warmed after the last ice age, some groups found themselves in landscapes where resources became more predictable. In certain regions, people began returning more often to favoured places, staying longer, storing more, and eventually experimenting with cultivation. This was not a sudden leap from wandering to farming. It was a long, uneven transition full of hesitation, adaptation, and probably a great deal of people saying the ancient equivalent of, "Are we really staying here again?" You walk with the group as they leave the clearing. The injured traveller moves more confidently now, though still carefully. The pace remains gentle, and the path follows a shallow valley where new green plants grow thick along the edges. Children walk ahead under watchful eyes. One carries a small shell ornament from the earlier exchange, holding it tightly in one hand. Another drags a stick through soft dirt, leaving a line that curls and breaks behind them. It will not last. But then many things do not need to last to matter. The day is mild. The air smells of grass-damp bark and sun-warmed stone. Birds call from low shrubs. Somewhere farther off, water moves over rocks. You listen to the quiet music of the group walking together, the soft thud of feet, the creak of hide bundles, the occasional clack of tools touching inside a pouch. After a while, the valley opens into a wider basin. Here the land feels generous. A stream curves through the centre. Nut trees grow nearby. Wild grasses stand thick in patches, their seed heads bending in the breeze. Animal tracks cross the softer ground near water. It is easy to see why people might return here. Easy to imagine a camp staying not just for a night, but for many days, perhaps weeks, perhaps longer. A few members of the group slow studying the basin with interest. You sense the question before anyone expresses it. Is this a place to stay? The answer is not simple. For people shaped by mobility, staying in one place brings both comfort and risk. Resources can be gathered more efficiently. Shelters improved food stored. But staying too long can exhaust nearby supplies. Waste accumulates. Social tensions may sharpen. Animals may learn where people are. The same place that offers safety can become a trap if the balance is wrong. This tension sits at the heart of the last wandering generations. Across different parts of the ancient world, some communities gradually became less mobile before full agriculture appeared. Archaeologists have found evidence of more settled hunter-gatherer life in places such as the Levant, where Natufian communities built semi-permanent structures and gathered wild grains before farming was fully established. You enter the basin and feel how inviting it is. The ground near the stream is soft but not waterlogged. A raised area nearby would stay drier in rain. Trees offer shade. Reeds grow at the water's edge. Stones suitable for hearths lie close at hand. The place almost seems to suggest a plan. Shelter here. Fire there! Food drying near the rocks. Children playing by the trees. It is easy, almost too easy, to imagine the future. Still, the group does not decide quickly. They spread out, testing the place with the same quiet intelligence they bring to every landscape. One person checks the stream, another studies plant growth, someone else looks for signs of predators, a few examine the wild grasses rubbing seed heads between fingers, letting the grains fall into a palm. A small but telling detail from early settled sites is the appearance of heavier tools such as grinding stones that are less convenient to carry over long distances. When people begin leaving heavy useful objects in a place, it suggests they expect to return or perhaps not leave for long. A stone too heavy for the trail becomes reasonable when the trail itself begins to shorten. Near the stream you notice a flat stone partly embedded in the earth. Someone kneels beside it and tests its surface. It could serve for grinding seeds, not perfectly perhaps, but well enough. The thought is simple. If this place is used again, the stone may remain here waiting. Waiting is a very different idea from carrying. The group rests through the warmest part of the day. Food is shared beneath the trees. A few seeds are ground roughly between stones. The sound is steady, almost drowsy. Scrape, press, turn, scrape again. Powder gathers slowly coarse and pale. You taste a small bit after it is mixed with water and warmed near the fire. It is plain earthy and faintly sweet. Not bread, not yet. More like a paste or porridge, humble but filling. The kind of food that does not impress anyone but quietly keeps them alive, which is honestly the true personality of many important foods. The question of why some people eventually adopted farming remains complex. Climate, population, growth, resource pressure, social gathering, storage, and cultural choices may all have played roles. Some explanations emphasize necessity, others suggest opportunity. The path was not identical everywhere, and farming did not automatically make life easier. In some cases, early farmers may have worked harder and eaten less varied diets than their foraging ancestors. That thought settles strangely as you watch the basin. Civilization from a distance can seem like a triumphant staircase. First wandering, then farming, then villages, then cities, then all the wonders and headaches of recorded history. But from here inside the moment, it feels less like triumph and more like trade. Less movement, more storage. More food in one place, more work in one place. More belonging to a patch of earth, less freedom to follow the horizon. You walk toward the edge of the basin as evening approaches. The light lies golden across the grasses. Seeds tremble in the breeze. The stream reflects the sky in broken silver pieces. Behind you, smoke begins to rise from a newly kindled fire. For tonight at least the group will stay. Maybe tomorrow too. Maybe they will return next season. Maybe one day people will build stronger shelters here and leave behind more than ash. You stand quietly, feeling the old wandering life and the coming settled life overlap for one fragile moment. No one here knows they are living near a turning point. They are simply choosing where to sleep, what to eat, how to care for one another, how long to remain. History often begins that way. Not with a declaration, but with a pause, a place that feels good enough to return to, a seed kept instead of eaten, a heavy stone left behind because someone believes they will come back. The evening cools, the fire glows, the basin settles into shadow, and you walk back toward the group, toward warmth, toward voices, toward the last long generations of wandering beneath the changing sky. The basin holds the night gently, and when morning comes, no one hurries away. That is the first thing you notice. The fire is rebuilt instead of abandoned. The shelters are adjusted instead of folded. The flat grinding stone near the stream is uncovered again, wiped clean with a handful of grass, and used as though it has already become part of the place. The group has not settled forever, not yet, but the day begins with a quiet suggestion of staying. You step into the cool morning air. Mist rises from the stream in pale ribbons. Dew clings to the wild grasses, and when the sun touches them, each seed head glows briefly, as though the field has been dusted with tiny lamps. The smell is rich and green. Damp earth, smoke, crushed plants, warm stone beginning to wake under light. You are standing at the edge of a new human future. Not a city, not even a village in the later sense. But something has shifted. People are beginning to remain longer in places where food can be gathered, stored, processed, and remembered. In several regions of the world, farming began after long periods of experimenting with wild plants and animals. The first domesticated crops appeared in different places at different times, including wheat and barley in Southwest Asia, millet, and rice in parts of East Asia, and maize much later in the Americas. You watch a person kneel among the wild grasses, gathering seed heads into one hand before cutting them with a small stone blade. The motion is careful and repetitive. Pull, cut, drop into the basket, pull, cut, drop again. It is not yet the work of a farmer tending a planted field. It is still gathering, but it is gathering with a new intensity. Nearby children collect fallen seeds from a hide spread on the ground. Their fingers are small and quick. Some seeds are lost in the dust, some stick to damp skin. A child sneezes when chaff floats into the air, then looks deeply offended by nature's poor manners. An adult laughs softly and shakes the hide again. The seeds are brought to the flat stone. Grinding begins. The sound is steady and low, stone against stone, a soft rasping that seems to settle into the morning itself. Coarse meal gathers slowly. Someone mixes it with water in a shallow container, then sets it near the fire to thicken. The food is plain but dependable. It can feed several people. It can be made again tomorrow if enough seeds remain. This is one of the small steps toward a transformed world. Once people begin relying more heavily on plants that can be harvested in quantity, stored and processed, the pull of place grows stronger. A good stand of wild grain is not just food. It is a reason to return, a reason to remember the season, a reason to protect a patch of earth. There is still lively debate about why agriculture took hold. Some point to climate change after the Ice Age, as warmer and more stable conditions made certain plants more abundant. Others emphasize population pressure, social gatherings, storage, or changing relationships between people and landscape. It may not have been one cause at all, but a braided set of pressures and choices different in each region. You walk to the stream where reeds grow thick along the bank. Their stems rustle in the breeze. Someone is cutting them for matting, perhaps to make sleeping surfaces drier, or to line storage pits. These are not dramatic inventions, but they matter. A dry floor, a covered cache, a better basket. Civilization will one day rest on many such unglamorous improvements, which is a little humbling, especially for civilization. The injured traveller sits in the sun working with fibre. Their foot is still wrapped, but the swelling has eased. They twist plant strands into cord, rolling them against the thigh with practice pressure. The cord will bind tools, tie bundles, repair shelters, hang ornaments, secure food. A world on the edge of settlement needs cord as much as it needs courage. A less familiar clue from early village life is that storage often came before grand architecture. Pits, baskets, lined spaces and containers allowed food to be kept in ways that changed social life. Stored food could support longer stays, larger gatherings, and perhaps new tensions too, because once something is stored, someone has to decide who guards it, who shares it, and who gets the last portion when winter grows rude. You glance toward the centre of the camp where several bundles have been placed together beneath a hide covering. Seeds, nuts, dried roots, a little smoked meat. The pile is modest, but it changes the mood. Food gathered for later has a quiet authority. It makes the camp feel less temporary. Later in the day, people begin strengthening the shelters. Branches are set more firmly. Gaps are filled with reeds and grass. Stones weigh down the edges. These are not houses, but they are more carefully made than a shelter for one night. You notice how the work encourages planning. If the wind comes from the north, the entrance should face away. If rain falls, water must run downhill. If food is stored, it must be kept dry. A child presses mud around the base of a shelter, with both hands making a serious mess and a slightly useful seal. Their palms leave prints in the wet earth. The marks will dry, crack and vanish, but for now, they are part of the structure. You think of the first villages still waiting ahead in time. Places like Jericho and Çatalhöyük will rise much later as more settled ways of life deepen. Walls, ovens, plastered floors, crowded roofs, rituals, trade, conflict, cooperation, and all the beautiful complications of people living close together will follow. But here in this gentler beginning, the future is still soft around the edges. As afternoon passes, the group gathers near the fire to eat the seed meal. It is warm, thick, and smoky from the coals. You take a small portion. It fills the mouth with earthiness, not exciting exactly, but steady. A food that says you may continue. Sometimes that is enough. The wild canid from before appears again near the edge of the basin. Farther away this time, almost hidden in the grass. It watches the camp, nose lifted, drawn perhaps by the smell of food. No one moves toward it. No one drives it away. The animal stands between worlds, too wild, yet curious, distant, yet present. Around you, humans are also between worlds, still moving, yet learning to stay. Evening arrives slowly. The grasses turn bronze. The stream darkens under the shade of trees. Smoke rises straight up in the cooling air, then thins into the blue. The stored food is covered again. The grinding stone remains where it is. No one carries it back to the shelter. It belongs here now, waiting for morning. That may be the quietest sign of all. A thing left behind because return is expected. You sit beside the fire and look across the basin. There are no streets, no walls, no temple bells, no carts creaking under grain sacks. But you can feel the first outline of those things, distant and dreamlike, forming from choices so ordinary they barely seem like choices at all. Stay another day, gather more seeds, strengthen the shelter, remember this place. The fire glows, the night lowers. The old wandering road still stretches beyond the hills, but now for the first time the ground itself seems to whisper back, "Remain." The basin rests under a softer night than the ones you first remember. The cold is still there, settling into the ground, touching the edges of your breath. But it feels less sharp now, less like an enemy pressing close, and more like a presence that can be managed. The fire burns steadily, its light reflecting off the stored bundles, the strengthened shelters, the tools laid carefully within reach. You sit near the edge of the firelight, watching the glow fade into the dark grass beyond. The group has stayed, not forever, but longer, and that has changed something. You can feel it in the way people move. There is less urgency in their gestures, less scanning of the horizon with every passing moment. The land here is becoming familiar not just as a place to pass through, but as a place that holds memory in a deeper way. You look toward the grinding stone still resting where it was used earlier. No one has moved it. No one has packed it away. It remains as a quiet promise. We will return, or perhaps we will not leave for long. Across different regions of the ancient world, this kind of shift marked the slow emergence of more settled ways of life. People did not suddenly abandon movement, but they began to anchor themselves more firmly to certain places. Over time, these anchors grew stronger, eventually leading to the first villages where structures became more permanent and daily life took on new patterns. You lie back slightly, looking up at the sky. The stars are the same. They have always been the same. But your relationship to them has changed. Before they marked movement, guiding you across open land. Now they also mark time in a place that might be returned to again and again. The dual meaning settles quietly in your mind. You hear soft movement nearby. The injured traveller shifts in their sleep, their breathing steady and calm. Their foot, once a source of concern, now rests wrapped and supported. Tomorrow they may walk without hesitation, or perhaps with only a faint memory of pain. Care has worked. Time has worked. The group has adapted. You think about all the small changes you have witnessed. Fire carried from place to place. Tools shaped with patient hands. Tracks read in snow and mud. Plants gathered, tested, remembered. Ornaments worn, exchanged, valued. Encounters with other humans, other kinds of humans. Animals watching from the edge of light. Seeds saved. Food stored. Shelters strengthened. Places returned to. Each of these moments felt small, ordinary, almost unnoticed. and yet together they have formed something vast. The long age before civilization was not empty. It was full of knowledge of adaptation of quiet decisions repeated over generations. It was a time when humans learned how to live in the world not by shaping it completely, but by understanding it deeply. There is a gentle uncertainty that remains when looking at this distant past. No written records tell you exactly what people thought, what they believed, or how they understood the changes happening around them. The evidence comes in fragments, tools, bones, marks in the earth, hints of patterns. From these researchers build careful interpretations, always aware that some parts of the story may never be fully known. You feel that uncertainty now, not as a problem, but as a kind of quiet space, a place where imagination and evidence meet, where you can sit beside a fire and consider what it might have felt like to live through these changes not knowing where they would lead. The fire crackles softly, a log shift sending a small cascade of sparks upward. They rise, glow briefly, then vanish into the dark just as so many moments have vanished before being recorded. And yet some things remain, not in objects, but in patterns, in the way humans gather, share, care, adapt. Remember, you close your eyes for a moment listening to the sounds around you, the steady breathing of those nearby, the soft movement of wind through grass, the distant call of a night bird, the low constant presence of the fire. It all feels connected. The past is not as distant as it first seemed. It lives in these patterns, in these small acts repeated across time. You open your eyes again and look across the basin. Tomorrow the group may stay, or they may move. Both choices are still possible. Both belong to this moment. But one path is beginning to take shape more clearly than before. A path towards staying, toward building, toward shaping the land more permanently. Not out of sudden ambition, but out of accumulated experience, out of countless small decisions that have slowly changed what it means to live. You sit quietly, letting the thoughts settle. The fire burns lower, the night deepens, and the long wandering age, though not yet over, begins to fade gently at its edges. In its place something new is forming, not loudly, not quickly, but steadily, like the slow turning of the seasons, like the steady rise of the sun, like the quiet decision to remain just a little longer. Now let the fire grow softer, let the night settle fully around you. The voices fade, the movement slows, the warmth of the fire becomes a gentle glow rather than a bright flame. You feel the ground beneath you steady and calm, the air cool against your skin balanced by the warmth at your side. The sky above stretches endlessly filled with stars that have watched all of this unfold without interruption. You imagine the many nights like this across countless generations, different faces, different places, but the same quiet rhythm, a fire, a group, a moment of rest between days of movement or work. The world turning slowly without hurry. You breathe in and out. The sounds soften further. The crackle of the fire becomes a whisper. The distant calls fade into silence. The weight of the day lifts gently away. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to follow. No path to walk tonight, only this stillness, this warmth, this quiet connection to a time before cities, before walls, before written history, when human life moved with the land and rested beneath open skies. You let the images drift, the plains, the forests, the rivers, the caves, the stones, the faces in firelight. They fade slowly like embers cooling at the end of the night, and as they fade you remain, calm, warm, at rest. The long human story continues, but for now you can simply let it go. Sweet dreams,